Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to the finale of What If I Was Reborn in Naruto as the legendary Orochimaru with the Mad Scientist system. Let the tale begin. Chapter 401, Why does Orochimaru have the ability to imprison others? Because his Mangekyo Sharingan possesses the power of imprisonment and tearing. Through his extensive research on human physiology and chakra, Orochimaru found that it wasn't difficult to use scientific means to retain these two abilities within the Rinnegan. Moreover, utilizing the Rinnegan to activate these powers would greatly enhance their effectiveness. However, Kaguya was the progenitor of chakra, and among all known beings, her spatial abilities were the most formidable. Attempting to imprison her with the Rinnegan's abilities alone was nearly impossible. Thus, Orochimaru had no choice but to resort to scientific methods. And when it comes to science, it must be mentioned. There are countless scientific means of attack, ranging from pistols, rifles, and submachine guns to mid-sized missiles, atomic bombs, aircraft carriers, space-class warships, and even planet-destroying battleships. The blueprints and manufacturing methods for all of these were included within his system. However, Orochimaru didn't have enough time to research these weapons and develop the technology to create missiles, atomic bombs, or even spaceships. Besides, such weapons were far too destructive, capable of obliterating the entire Earth, making them unsuitable for the ninja world. Thus, Orochimaru chose a different path, directly purchasing an auxiliary biological engine. Purchasing a biological engine required 1 million technology points. Although Orochimaru had spent decades in this world and had completed numerous scientific research projects, each project only yielded around 10,000 to 20,000 points, with the most significant ones granting 50,000 at most. With additional expenses and losses factored in, his points simply weren't enough. For this reason, he had been actively developing civilian technologies, such as mobile phones, computers, LCD screens, and the internet. All for the sole purpose of rapidly accumulating enough technology points to purchase the biological engine. There's no point in fighting? Hearing Orochimaru's words, Kaguya narrowed her eyes slightly. Indeed, Orochimaru had revived her. Not only that, but he had also helped her regain a fully intact Ten-Tails body. There was no need for her to continue fighting him. Seeing that Kaguya's tone had relaxed, Orochimaru continued to guide her thoughts. Exactly. What you resent the most is that your two sons sealed you away. This has nothing to do with anyone else. You could simply seek out the Sage of Six Paths himself and eliminate him personally. That way, you would avenge your imprisonment and gain me as an ally. Wouldn't that be the best option? That does make sense. Akatsuki Kaguya seemed to regain some clarity and, surprisingly, nodded in agreement with Orochimaru's reasoning. But, can you really help me deal with those traitors? Guaranteed. Orochimaru smirked. If you agree, why don't we step outside and continue this conversation? Fine. As soon as Kaguya finished speaking, the surrounding scenery abruptly shifted. The once dark void was gone. The sky returned to its eerie blackness, with a blood-red moon looming overhead. Seeing the surroundings revert to normal, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Mikoto all breathed a sigh of relief. Orochimaru slowly descended, landing softly on the ground with the others, before dismissing Susanoo. A smile spread across Orochimaru's lips. As expected, Kaguya's endless pursuit of power had been influenced by the God Tree and the Chakra Fruit. Now, by using the biological engine to strip away that will, her mind was beginning to return to normal. However, just as Orochimaru was about to introduce Tsunade and the others to Kaguya, she suddenly frowned. Then, a tailed beast's face emerged from her back. Click! A crisp, cracking sound echoed. The pale white-tailed beast's face expanded, growing larger and larger. Its form continuously shifted, alternating between the appearances of Shikaku, one tail, Matatabi, two tails, and all the way to Kurama, 9 tails. Seeing this scene, everyone tensed up once more. This is Lord Orochimaru. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes before calmly raising a hand, gesturing for everyone to stay calm. It's fine. No sooner had he spoken than the shape-shifting face settled, fixing itself into the form of Gyuki, 8 tails. The 8 tails then opened its mouth and spat out a person as if vomiting. Bang! The person crashed onto the ground, sending dust scattering. As this happened, Kagaya's back gradually returned to normal. This is Uchiha Madara? Tsunade and the others exchanged glances, stunned. Was Kagaya still capable of this? Lying on the ground, Madara looked completely drained. His once overwhelming power was gone, leaving him in a near-death state. Although his body was intact, his signature dark red armor remained untouched by Amaterasu's flames. Why? Why has it come to this? Madara muttered in disbelief. He refused to accept what had happened. Black Zetsu was not a manifestation of his own will, but Kagaya's will? The infinite Tsukuyomi. Had it all been a lie? Just a ploy, a conspiracy woven by Black Zetsu to revive Kagaya? Uchiha Madara, who prided himself on having seen through everything in this world, had, in the end, been reduced to someone else's pawn? For a self-proclaimed supreme being like Madara, this was the ultimate tragedy. Orochimaru slowly approached the fallen man. He gazed down at this once invincible legend and murmured, "I'm sorry, Madara. I used you." "Ha! Used me?" Madara let out a bitter laugh. "In all my years, no one has ever used me like this, but this time. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Orochimaru, tell me. How is it that you understands everything, while I do not? Are you simply a genius? Or, was I just born a fool?" Orochimaru's expression remained indifferent. "I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that. The only thing I can do is ensure you receive a proper burial. Buried next to the first Hokage. Hashirama?" Madara stared at the blood-red moon overhead and murmured, "Humph. Everyone's dead. It doesn't matter where I'm buried." Then, lying on the ground, Madara took a deep breath. "Orochimaru, did you know? Aside from Hashirama, perhaps you are the one I admire the most. A shinobi who reached such heights without relying on bloodline power. In this entire world, you might be the only one. Perhaps." Orochimaru responded softly. Without the power of Senju or Uchiha, it was impossible to attain the power of the Six Paths. But Orochimaru had defied this truth, becoming the sole ninja in history to achieve such power purely through science. Madara fell silent. He would never speak again. He had closed his eyes, passing away quietly. This time, the once peerless legend had truly fallen. There would be no resurrection. Orochimaru would never allow the secrets of Edo Tensei to be passed on. Gazing at Madara's lifeless body, Orochimaru let out a quiet sigh. Once, he had admired this man. But in the end, he had no choice but to use him. Enough of this. Orochimaru slowly raised his hands, forming a strange seal. Infinite Tsukuyomi, release. Chapter 402, the method to release Infinite Tsukuyomi was quite simple. According to the original sage of Six Paths, only Naruto, who possessed the chakra of all the tailed beasts, and Sasuke, who wielded the Rinnegan, could perform the necessary hand seal. In other words, Indra, Asura, and the Ten Tails combined. Orochimaru possessed all three powers, so undoing Infinite Tsukuyomi barely consumed any of his energy. As the technique was cast, countless tree roots began to wither and collapse. The shinobi who had been entangled in the roots slowly awakened, regaining their consciousness. What happened? Is it over? Who is that woman? As their gazes landed on Kagaya, Inoki, the fourth Raikage, and other powerful figures of the ninja world were filled with bewilderment. They had never seen this woman before. And the sheer aura she emitted, so powerful that just looking at her brought an indescribable pressure, left them feeling uneasy. Their curiosity was piqued. "Tsunade, I'll leave it to you to explain when we get back." Orochimaru had no intention of offering an explanation himself. Understood. Orochimaru had successfully revived Kagaya and temporarily reached a truce with her. He handed Guy over to Kakashi and entrusted Madara to Zetsu. After briefly greeting Minato, he took 3 women and boarded Kagaya's space-time express. Kagaya's spatial abilities were utterly absurd. She only needed a general direction, and she could open a spatial rift in front of her while simultaneously creating an exit at the desired location. Even when traveling with multiple people, she could reach any destination instantly. Thus, they returned to the Land of Frost that very night. The main city of the Land of Frost, Orochimaru's villa. When Kushina, who had just been freed from infinite Tsukuyomi, saw Kagaya enter with her long silver-gray hair, she was completely stunned. Had it not been for the familiar figures of Orochimaru and Tsunade behind her, she might have been terrified by the sheer coldness in Kagaya's gaze. You all go back to your rooms and rest for now. Mikoto, make me a pot of tea. I have something to discuss with Kagaya. Understood. No, Kushina, let's go. Knowing that Orochimaru had important matters to discuss, Tsunade didn't hesitate. She promptly led the others back to their rooms. At the same time, she briefly filled Kushina in on what had transpired. Once everyone had left, Orochimaru gestured toward the sofa, signaling for Kagaya to sit. Kagaya glanced around the modern-style room, and for the first time, a subtle fluctuation appeared in her usually indifferent expression. Slowly, she walked to the sofa and sat down gracefully, her piercing eyes filled with curiosity as she stared at Orochimaru. This is what you call science? That's right. Orochimaru replied calmly. But before we get to the main topic, can I ask you a question first? Go ahead. What does it feel like to be sealed away by the power of the 6 paths? Kagaya's expression remained calm as she answered. For the most part, I was unconscious. Hearing this, Orochimaru couldn't help but click his tongue in thought. If she had been fully aware throughout those thousands of years of imprisonment, it would have been worse than death. Humans were social creatures. Being completely isolated for such a long time would have driven anyone insane. Even being locked in a small, dark room for too long could make an ordinary person go mad. Thousands of years? Just the thought was terrifying. Then, can you still use your spatial powers to return to your home planet? Return? For what purpose? Of course, to help you crush the rebels and avenge yourself. Revenge? The moment Kagaya heard that word, she froze. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. The birds sang, and the scent of flowers filled the air. Before Orochimaru even opened his eyes, he heard several women's voices coming from the living room. Should we wake him up? No, let him sleep a little longer. He's been working hard for so long, he deserves some rest. Then, what should I call you? Tsunade looked at the woman in front of her, her tone filled with uncertainty. By bloodline, the Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki clans all originated from Akatsuki Kagaya. Facing their 1,000-year-old ancestor, even someone as casual as Tsunade felt compelled to show respect. Whatever you like. Kagaya's tone remained as calm as ever, leaving Tsunade at a loss for words. Well then, Lady Kagaya, how about I take you for a walk while Lord Orochimaru is still asleep? Kushina, shaking off her nervousness, interjected with a bright smile. Orochimaru had already told them Kagaya's story. Now that they knew who she was, they no longer feared her. Instead, they felt pity for her. Each of these women had a naturally kind and empathetic nature. Thus, Kushina hoped to befriend Kagaya. As Kagaya gazed at the cheerful red-haired girl, an old memory resurfaced. She thought of the maid who had once taken care of her when she first came to Earth. The girl who had later become her sister. Forget the walk. Just tell me about the current state of the world. Ah! Of course! No problem. And so, the women gathered in a circle, explaining the ninja world's current situation to Princess Akatsuki. Orochimaru, lying in bed and listening to their chatter, couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Had he really been in this world for so long? The land of frost was bustling with life and activity. The streets were filled with lively merchants and shoppers. On a busy street, a young red-haired girl was munching away on a bag of potato chips, eating like no one else existed. Beside her, a cool-looking boy turned his head, staring at her in exasperation. "Rage, eat less. If you keep eating, you'll turn into a fat pig." "No way." Rage confidently stuffed another chip into her mouth. "My mom said I have a special metabolism. No matter how much I eat, I won't get fat. I'm an Uzumaki, not an Akimichi." "Whatever. Do what you want." Before Sasuke could finish speaking, a loud voice suddenly boomed behind them. "What's wrong with being an Akimichi? What's wrong with it? I'm big-boned, not fat." Hearing that voice, Rage stiffened. Slowly, she turned her head. Seeing the two people standing behind her, she couldn't help but feel awkward. Shikamaru, Choji? When did you two get here?" "You were too busy stuffing your face to notice." Shikamaru lazily rested his head on his hand. Before Rage could respond, a shocked voice called out from a distance. "Sasuke! Rage! Hey!" "Oh, Shikamaru and Choji are here too?" The approaching figure was Naruto. Shikamaru frowned. "Naruto, what's got you so riled up?" "Something huge happened. Do you guys remember what happened 3 nights ago?" "3 nights ago?" Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, exchanging a glance with Choji. "What are you talking about?" Naruto looked at them in disbelief. "You seriously don't remember?" "That night, the moon suddenly shone with a dazzling light, and then, everyone just fell asleep. When we woke up, it was already the next morning." "The moon, shining brightly? Everyone falling asleep?" Shikamaru frowned in thought. Choji also scratched his head, clearly confused. "Did that really happen?" "Of course it did!" Naruto exclaimed, scratching his head in frustration. "And during that time, no one has any memory of what happened. Don't you guys think that's strange?" Chapter 403, Sleeping, with no memory? Hearing this, Choji looked speechless. "Naruto, it's normal for people to not remember anything while sleeping." "That's right, Naruto, what kind of strange rumor did you hear this time?" "Sakura?" Hearing this voice, Naruto suddenly turned his head and saw a little girl with pink hair walking toward him. He immediately greeted her with a grin. "Hi, Sakura." Sakura put her hands on her hips and sighed. "Hey, you! Why are you always talking so much these days?" "I don't talk that much. My dad was the one who told me about this." "Oh?" Hearing that it was Naruto's father who said it, everyone except Rage perked up. After all, they all knew that Naruto's father was the Lord of the Land of Frost, Namake's Minato. "Naruto, when exactly did this happen? What time? What time at night?" Naruto was briefly stunned, then touched his chin, thinking back carefully. As Naruto recounted his memory, the children around him looked surprised. They had never heard about this before. After all, only a small number of shinobi had participated in that battle. Not to mention, kids their age all went to bed early. Even many adult shinobi weren't aware of the incident, let alone children. The only reason Naruto knew about it was that he happened to wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. At that time, he noticed that the moon had turned red and thought it was strange. Then, after being struck by Tsukuyami, he woke up to find that he had wet himself in the living room. That was how he realized something had happened before the other kids did. Most civilian shinobi were confused about the event, but since it didn't cause them any real harm, they didn't take it too seriously. At most, it became an interesting topic for casual conversation. Of course, the reason why Uzumaki Rage remained so calm was that she knew it must have something to do with her parents. She clearly remembered that 2 days ago, a woman had suddenly appeared in her house. She had a cold expression and an overwhelming presence that sent chills down one's spine. That woman had seemingly appeared out of thin air. According to her father, it was related to the red moon that night. As the children continued chatting, Sasuke's eyes suddenly lit up. Big brother? On the distant street, two young Uchiha, each carrying a ninja sword and clad in armor, were walking toward them, talking and laughing. Both were extremely handsome and wore the Uchiha clan's uniform. Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Shisui. Upon hearing Sasuke's voice, Itachi glanced in his direction and smiled. Sasuke! You don't have school today? What? Brother, did you forget? Something big happened a few days ago, so classes have been suspended for days. School only resumes tomorrow. Speaking of which, big brother, what exactly happened? Does it have anything to do with that white-haired woman from Ryu's family? Seeing Sasuke looking so eager, even Shisui, standing beside Itachi, couldn't help but chuckle. Sasuke, it's classified. How could we tell you? Don't put your brother in a tough spot. Ah. Really? Sasuke's enthusiasm instantly deflated when he heard that it was a secret. After all, curiosity was in human nature. Alright, you guys head back first. Shisui and I have some business to take care of. Fine. Sasuke reluctantly agreed. As they watched the two walk away, Choji's eyes filled with admiration. Sasuke, my dad told me that your brother isn't even 14 yet, and he's already capable of fighting a Kage-level opponent. Is that true? Of course. I've always admired my big brother. Just as Sasuke finished speaking, he noticed something off. Sakura, not far away, was gazing at him with a dreamy expression. Sasuke is so cool. I think I'm cooler than him. Bang! A slap landed on Naruto's head from out of nowhere. Clutching his head, Naruto looked innocent. Why did you hit me, Sakura? I was just telling the truth. Naruto, don't insult my Sasuke. Sakura shouted at him in anger. If you keep saying nonsense, I won't forgive you. In her heart, Sasuke was the most handsome boy. Even if Naruto was the son of the city lord, he could never compare. While a group of 7 or 8-year-olds chattered away in the streets, inside the office of the Lord of the Land of Frost, a silver-haired shinobi, clad in a vest and carrying a ninja sword, was reporting to Namake's Minato. According to the hospital's report, Guy's leg was fractured, but it's nothing serious. He should be able to walk again in half a month. I see, Minato nodded. That's good. By the way, Kakashi, get ready and head to this location for a mission. As he spoke, Minato handed over a map. Kakashi accepted the scroll without hesitation and nodded. Understood. My guy, after opening the 8th gate, should have suffered a completely shattered leg. However, since he was still young, and with Orochimaru's enhancement formula, his injuries weren't as severe this time. Fully armed, Kakashi moved swiftly, though doubts lingered in his mind. The location marked on the map was within the Land of Sound. Why had Minato-sensei assigned him a mission there? After all, Orochimaru's Otogakure was within the Land of Sound, a fact widely known in the ninja world. Otogakure had its own shinobi. No matter how he thought about it, this mission shouldn't have fallen to him. But when he arrived at the designated place and saw the two figures standing outside a massive wooden house in the remote forest, he was stunned. In the front yard of the wooden house, beneath a large tree, a girl with painted cheeks gently caressed the scarred half of a man's face. Tears welled up in her eyes. Obito, thank you, for everything you've done for me. Obito, having discarded his mask, revealed a rare, gentle smile. Rin, I should be the one thanking you. Thank me? Rin wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes, looking puzzled. For what? For being willing to live here with me in seclusion. Silly Obito, you've done so much for me. How could this be a burden? Rin wiped her tears and smiled. But I am surprised you chose the Land of Sound. What's so surprising? Obito chuckled. Lord Orochimaru resurrected you, which means I've been given a second chance too. Watching over this land for him. I don't see anything wrong with that. Fine, fine. You're always right. Rin, Obito gazed at her with warmth. Just listen to me this once. After we get married, you can decide everything, okay? You. What are you talking about? I never agreed to marry you. Rin blushed slightly. Obito grinned foolishly. Hey, you agreed to come here with me. Isn't marriage just a matter of time? I won't. What if I insist? You. We'll talk about it later. Rin pretended to be angry. Obito immediately stepped forward, showering her with sweet words, trying to coax her. As they laughed and chased each other around, a familiar voice called out. Kakashi? Obito? Rin. Chapter 404, The Resurrection Technique is an Unnatural Ability. Even though Orochimaru had mastered multiple resurrection techniques, he rarely used them under normal circumstances. After all, birth, aging, illness, and death are part of the natural cycle. It was best not to interfere with the natural order. So far, aside from Uchiha Madara, whom he had no choice but to revive, the only others he had resurrected were Nawaki and now, Noara Rin. Those brought back to life were not suited to appear in public. The same was true for those who were neither truly alive nor completely dead. And so, two individuals who did not belong in the public eye chose to live in seclusion. Obito. Rin. What are you two doing here? Kakashi was visibly shocked. He couldn't comprehend why his two deceased friends were now standing before him, alive. Had the infinite Tsukuyomi not been undone? Come on, don't look so surprised. If you don't mind, come in and sit for a while, Obito said casually. Did Obito still hate Kakashi? Of course, he did. After all, the root of his descent into darkness was the fact that his best friend, Kakashi, had killed the girl he loved, Noara Rin. Watching his comrades slaughter each other, his Sharingan had been awakened through grief, transforming him into a ghost that lived in the shadows. But now that Rin had returned, that hatred naturally faded away. For him, as long as he could exist in a world where Rin was alive, hatred no longer mattered. The same was true for Kakashi. Late at night, moonlight bathed the world below. Although the moon was missing a piece tonight, it still shone brightly. It had to be said, the Sage of Six Paths had done at least one good thing, creating such a magnificent moon for humanity. Gazing at the bright moon, Tsunade leaned against the bathroom window, humming softly. I want to have a child. So, Orochimaru. Her exaggerated bust pressed against the smooth wall. The sound of rushing water in the bathroom masked the rhythmic slaps of their movements. Standing behind her, Orochimaru smirked. Isn't it troublesome to have a child? Isn't this just fine? No. No. A woman without children is incomplete. So, you have to do it. Tsunade retorted firmly. By normal human standards, she was already considered of advanced maternal age. But for a kunoichi, especially Tsunade, this was of no concern. Wasn't she feeling a bit uneasy because Makoto and Kushina had both given birth to daughters? Of course, that was impossible. As she had said, a woman's life was incomplete without a child. Well, I suppose there's no helping it. At the last moment, Orochimaru relented, granting Tsunade's request and ensuring the fusion of their genes. After finishing their bath and changing into their nightgowns, Orochimaru stepped outside to the villa's courtyard. In the yard, a woman with long, silver-white hair stood, gazing up at the sky. More precisely, she was staring at the moon. Seeing the cold and detached woman, Orochimaru smirked. Everything on my side is just about settled. What about you? Can you go back? Still trying. Kagaya's voice was indifferent. The planet where the god tree was planted was under her control. This meant that the coordinates of Earth were only vaguely known to the rebellious Otsutsuki Momoshiki and his faction. They didn't have the precise location. That was why, whenever the Otsutsuki clan sought to invade Earth, it took them time to locate its exact coordinates. In other words, there were only two ways to permanently eliminate the security threat to Earth. 1. Kagaya could send a signal, allowing the enemy to pinpoint Earth's position, leading to an invasion. 2. Kagaya could return to the Akatsuki homeworld herself. Orochimaru was never one to act passively, so he chose to take the initiative. He wanted Kagaya to bring him along. Unfortunately, having been sealed for so long, Kagaya's memory of her journey to Earth was hazy. It would take time to find her way back. Let me know when you figure it out. Having grown used to Kagaya's cold demeanor, Orochimaru wasn't bothered. By the way, since your Akatsuki clan came to Earth to plant the God Tree a long time ago, does that mean your space-time abilities don't originate from it? Correct. Spatial power is an innate ability of our clan, and has nothing to do with the God Tree. I see. Orochimaru mused. Then, can you connect to other dimensions? Orochimaru asked tentatively, his eyes filled with anticipation. Before resurrecting Kagaya, he hadn't known whether she would be an ally or an enemy. Aside from fulfilling his agreement with Black Zetsu, he also harbored a secret hope. A hope that Kagaya's mastery over spacetime could be the key to something greater. In Orochimaru's understanding, the person with the most powerful spacetime abilities in the shinobi world was undoubtedly Akatsuki Kagaya. She could instantaneously shift between 6 different dimensions, a feat beyond comprehension. Even with the hollow shell of the Ten Tails and Sakura's assistance, Obito could barely manage to connect to one of Kagaya's dimensions. But Kagaya could move between 6 effortlessly. This alone demonstrated the sheer strength of her spatial abilities. When Orochimaru first arrived in this world, he had wondered. Did he have any hope of returning to his original world? He had searched for ways to break through spacetime, but even with his current strength, he had yet to find a method. Other dimensions? Kagaya turned her cold gaze toward him. Of course not. Space and dimensions are not the same thing. You're overthinking it. So, is it that you can't find them, or you can't connect to them? Of course, I can't find them. And if I can't find them, naturally, I can't connect to them. For once, Kagaya actually spoke more than a few words. Why? Are you from another world as well? Kagaya's unexpected insight left Orochimaru momentarily speechless. Forget it. If it can't be found, there's no point in discussing it further. Sure enough, breaking through the barriers of spacetime wasn't that simple. If even Kagaya couldn't do it, then there truly was no way. Would he have to rely on the system? Perhaps there is another way. Oh? What is it? Orochimaru, who had already given up, suddenly perked up. Kagaya replied calmly, go to the Akatsuki homeworld. There is a secret archive that contains the coordinates of countless inhabited planets. Perhaps your world is among them. I see. Hearing this, Orochimaru's excitement faded again. Planetary coordinates? It sounded impressive, but Orochimaru knew better. The Earth he came from might not even be in this universe. Who knew where the Naruto world truly existed? Was it in a parallel dimension or an entirely different universe? Thank you for the information, but for now, I should focus on dealing with the Akatsuki clan first. Chapter 405. According to Kagaya, the Akatsuki clan had long been embroiled in civil war, and she had originally come to Earth while fleeing a rebellion. Although her clan had planted god trees on numerous planets, the god fruit remained a rare commodity. This was because, in order for a god tree to bear fruit, not only did it require the vitality of living beings as nourishment, but it also needed to be cultivated for an extensive period. As a result, even within the Akatsuki clan, only a select few were ever granted the privilege of consuming the god fruit. Those unqualified to eat it generally did not possess great combat strength. Otherwise, Kagaya would not have needed to cultivate white zetsu in preparation for the Akatsuki clan members who might one day arrive on Earth. This war, then, was truly on a massive scale. Your power is indeed unique, but the enemy is far stronger than you realize. Even I fear them. Unlike Orochimaru, Kagaya did not appear calm. Instead, a trace of deep-seated fear flickered in her gaze. A fear that seemed ingrained in her very soul. Even after 1,000 years, it had not faded. Orochimaru immediately took note of Kagaya's apprehension, and for the first time, he found himself genuinely curious. It was a fact that Kagaya feared the arrival of her fellow Akatsuki. However, based on his own knowledge, the power displayed by Akatsuki Momoshiki was hardly enough to pose a real threat to Kagaya. If that was the case, then what exactly was she so afraid of? Was it simply the lingering trauma of her past? Or was the Akatsuki clan even more formidable than what he remembered? Orochimaru didn't have the answer, but at this point, he no longer cared. They use chakra, correct? Yes. Then there's no problem. Orochimaru smirked confidently. As long as the energy they wield is chakra, no matter how powerful they are, they cannot surpass me. Moreover, even if they possess other forms of energy, just give me a little time, and I will turn the tides. All you need to do is trust me, and find the coordinates of your homeworld. Hearing Orochimaru's assured response, Kagaya was momentarily stunned. Her pale, grayish-white pupils, which could peer into the depths of one's soul, simply stared into Orochimaru's eyes. A long silence stretched between them before she finally spoke in her usual indifferent tone. Orochimaru, you truly are different from other humans. Oh? That's quite the honor. The corners of Orochimaru's lips curled up, accepting Kagaya's words without hesitation. The original Orochimaru was already an anomaly in this world. Now, with the mindset and logic of a traveler from another world, he was even more of an enigma. Tell me, what is your true goal? Are you simply protecting this planet? No. Orochimaru continued to smile. Protecting this planet is merely a byproduct. As for me, I simply enjoy manipulating the strong and making them dance in the palm of my hand. Whether I use raw power or intricate schemes, as long as I can shape the fate of those who consider themselves above others, I find immense satisfaction. That, perhaps, is what truly sets me apart from the rest. Then is that also why you agreed to Black Zetsu's request to rescue me? Do you intend to make me submit to you? Half right. Half? Kagaya frowned. Orochimaru nodded nonchalantly. I do wish for you to submit, but not in the way you think. Because I have always believed that if one is to conquer a powerful and noble goddess, then making her my own woman would be far more satisfying than merely forcing her into submission. Orochimaru, you are quite bold. I'd say so too. No one has ever dared to speak to me so rudely. Well, now someone has. Orochimaru's confident smirk, coupled with his brazen words, left Kagaya momentarily speechless. She was a proud princess of the Akatsuki clan. Upon arriving on Earth, she was worshipped as a holy and untouchable goddess. Even the pretentious emperor of the ancestral kingdom, when he sought to claim her, at least attempted to disguise his intentions with feigned gentleness. She had never imagined that one day, a man would walk right up to her and speak such direct and unrestrained words. She had no experience dealing with someone like this. By all logic, her first reaction should have been to impale Orochimaru with her Tomagoroshi no Haikatsu. And yet, for some inexplicable reason, she couldn't bring herself to feel any anger toward him. Was it because she knew she couldn't defeat him? Or was it because he did not bother to conceal his true thoughts? Perhaps even Kagaya herself didn't know. A few days later. The moon. A castle stood on the lunar surface. Inside, several individuals clad in white robes adorned with magatama lived in seclusion. On this particular day, a portal suddenly appeared in an open space outside the castle. Two figures emerged. One male, one female. One with black hair, the other with white. Are these all Hamura's descendants? Yes. Orochimaru grinned wickedly. How can we allow potential enemies to rest easy at our doorstep? Though Hamura may have felt guilt toward you, and his descendants may be innocent, in order to prevent them from ever turning against Earth, we must wipe them all out. Will you do it, or shall I? I will. Kagaya's expression remained ice-cold, showing no sign of hesitation. Even though these people shared her bloodline. And so, the castle was soon filled with screams of terror. Within mere minutes, the entire Akatsuki clan that had resided on the moon, men, women, elderly, and children, had been slaughtered. Not a single soul was spared, including a young boy by the name of Akatsuki Tonari. Chapter 406. Using the Chibaku Tensei to seal Kagaya within the moon and to guard the Geto statue, the younger brother of the Sage of the Six Paths, Akatsuki Hamura, led his clan to the moon, leaving only a branch of their lineage on Earth, the present-day Hyuga clan. After Hamura's death, his descendants split into two factions due to differing interpretations of his final words. One faction, the Branch family, believed that the world created by the Sage of the Six Paths had been plagued by war for millennia and was a failure that should be erased. Thus, using the Tensigen, they massacred the main family members who had advocated for peace. Tonari is a direct descendant of this Branch family. He now lives alone in a castle on the moon, overseeing the Earth. With the main family completely wiped out and the Branch members gradually dying out over time, only a few Akatsuki remain on the moon. Orochimaru's space-time abilities are not particularly strong, but with the power of the Six Paths and the Rinnegan, opening a portal to the moon is a trivial matter. He had long known about the existence of people on the moon, yet they had never descended to Earth. Now that Kagaya was searching for the coordinates of the Akatsuki homeworld, Orochimaru finally had the time to investigate the situation on the moon. The Akatsuki clan is an aloof and arrogant race. Especially the war-hungry faction of the Branch family, they view humans as mere ants. In the near future, they may even attempt to destroy the world, much like Kagaya once did. Thus, before heading to the Akatsuki homeworld, Orochimaru took the initiative to eliminate them before they could invade Earth. Under these circumstances, eliminating future threats was the goal of Orochimaru's actions. Tonari was originally supposed to awaken the Tensigen, possessing enough power to split the moon itself. But at this moment, he was only around 10 years old. He had neither the Tensigen nor even a normal Byakugan. He had been blind from birth. Before the overwhelming power of their ancestor, Kagaya Akatsuki, they couldn't even flee. Damn it! Ah! Curse you! Die! Aya! Who are you? Who? Kagaya. Kagaya's expression remained ice-cold as the veins bulged at the corners of her Byakugan-infused eyes. With Kagaya's pure Byakugan power coursing through her, the gray bone in her hand mercilessly pierced through the body of the last surviving Akatsuki. As she watched his body crumble before her, Orochimaru's voice rang out beside her. I had originally thought, you wouldn't be able to do it. Why wouldn't I be able to? Kagaya asked indifferently. A smirk formed at the corner of Orochimaru's lips. They are Hamura's descendants. Which means, they are your descendants as well. Shouldn't you hesitate before striking down your own kin? No, they are the descendants of humans. Oh? Orochimaru raised an eyebrow. So you're cutting ties so decisively? It seems you truly hate them. Even after I stripped the Ten-Tails will from you, your hatred remains unchanged. I entrusted my power to them so they could protect humanity. Yet, those two traitors not only defied me but turned their swords against me, sealing me away for 1,000 years. A cold glint flashed in Kagaya's eyes. If you were in my place, wouldn't you hate them? Of course, Orochimaru said calmly. But if you truly hate them so much, why haven't you gone to the Pure Land to kill them? To Orochimaru, the phrase soul eradication was merely a technical term. In the shinobi world, it was known as erasing chakra imprints. When a shinobi dies, their spirit enters a place known as the Pure Land. Ordinary ninjas, due to their weak spiritual energy, exist there in a mindless state. But those who possess the Rinnegan are different. The Rinnegan is the eye of an immortal, capable of summoning the King of Hell and wielding the powers of the Six Paths of Reincarnation. What kind of privileges these eyes grant in the Pure Land, Orochimaru wasn't entirely sure. But at the very least, they allow one to retain their consciousness. Just like Akatsuki Hagoromo. He remembers everything from his time in the Pure Land. With Kagaya's current power, she could easily split off a portion of her spiritual energy and descend into the Pure Land to hunt down Hagoromo. But erased from existence, Kagaya muttered. After a long pause, a trace of sadness surfaced on her once impassive face. Tears welled up in her pale gray eyes and streaked down her cheeks. But they were still, my children. At that moment, Kagaya could no longer suppress her sorrow. Crystal-clear tears rolled down her pale cheeks and fell to the ground. No matter the world, a mother's love is the most profound force of all. There are always more unfilial sons than there are cruel mothers. Think about it, raising a child with such care, only for them to betray you in the end, turning their blade against you. No mother could endure such pain. That's why, no matter how much Kagaya claimed to hate her two unfilial sons, she could never truly bring herself to erase them completely. Here! Orochimaru pulled out a tissue from somewhere and handed it to her. Whether you admit it or not, in my eyes, you're just a pitiful woman. Almost reflexively, Kagaya accepted the tissue. Orochimaru continued, when you break it all down, this entire conflict stems from a failure to communicate. If you had just explained your reasons back then, and if Hagoromo had told you the name of the woman he loved, maybe none of this would have happened. With that, Orochimaru turned away, walking toward the massive golden Tensigen. Take your time thinking about it. I'm going to check on the Tensigen. Chapter 407, There are two types of Tensigen. The first is formed by the fusion of multiple Byakugan, creating a perpetual motion machine that never dies and can generate immense energy. The second type evolves from members of the Akatsuki clan who have taken the Byakugan from the Hyuga clan. However, once removed, it will degenerate back into the Byakugan. But now, due to Orochimaru's early intervention, neither of these two types of reincarnated eyes have had the chance to appear. The last remaining descendants of Hamura were also massacred with the combined efforts of Orochimaru and Kagaya. Looking at the massive spherical fortress floating in front of him, Orochimaru spread his chakra wings and flew toward it. Inside the fortress, a colossal golden eye, known as the Tensigen, floated at its center. It was said that this was the Akatsuki clan's treasured artifact, capable of moving the moon. This was the power used to divide and destroy the clan. But now, to Orochimaru, it was merely an object of research value. At this point, Orochimaru could already fly without wings. Still, he couldn't deny that the visual effect of these wings was impressive. At the very least, it had caught the attention of the indifferent Kagaya. This guy is so strange. She couldn't understand why he insisted on using those elaborate yet impractical wings when he could clearly fly with the power of the six paths. Kagaya was puzzled. Orochimaru had not only pacified the shinobi world but had now conquered the moon as well? For ordinary shinobi, such a thing was simply unimaginable. Fortunately, no one except Tsunade knew about this matter. A day later, the two returned to Earth, and life resumed its normal course. Kagaya continued her cold search for the location of the Akatsuki clan's homeworld, while Orochimaru focused on his research, living an unhurried life with several women. As time passed, the bellies of several women grew larger. For Tsunade, this was her first child, while the others were expecting their second. Half a year later. Land of Frost, Orochimaru's villa, living room. The villa's doorbell suddenly rang. I'll get it. Nono took the initiative. Soon, the door opened. Nono returned to the living room with an unreadable expression. Oh! Zetsu, what is it? Orochimaru asked with a smile. Everyone knew the rule, no one was allowed to use abilities to enter Orochimaru's home. Thus, it was perfectly normal for someone to ring the doorbell and enter. Mother asked me to inform you that the teleportation portal to the homeworld is ready. Oh! Alright, I'll be there soon. Land of Frost, Central City Square. A massive statue of Orochimaru stood in the middle of the city square. Under the statue, a dozen elite jonin formed a perimeter, maintaining a security cordon around the area. In the center, on a structure resembling an altar, stood a woman with pale gray eyes, long silver hair, and a flowing robe. The altar was massive, spanning at least 20 meters in radius. Orochimaru set aside the previous discussion about concubines and arrived at the scene with his 4 women. It took 3 months, but the teleportation portal is finally complete, Kaguya said calmly. However, this portal connects directly to the teleportation formation on the Akatsuki clan's homeworld. If the link remains active for more than 3 days, they will likely notice. You should act quickly. Undoubtedly, it had taken Kaguya 3 months to locate the Akatsuki homeworld and another 3 months to construct the teleportation array as per Orochimaru's request. 3 days? That's more than enough. So, when do we depart? You can leave now, Orochimaru said without hesitation. Huh? So soon? If we leave like this, won't it be dangerous? Yeah, shouldn't you at least make some preparations? Tsunade and the others, knowing exactly where Orochimaru was going, immediately put aside their previous concerns and voiced their worries. There's no need. Orochimaru stepped onto the teleportation array with Kaguya. I'll go with her first to scout the area. Zetsu, pass down my previous orders and have them gather here within an hour. Understood. Tsunade, explain to them how to use the teleportation portal. We're leading first. All right, be careful. Orochimaru nodded. I know. As soon as the words left his mouth, Kaguya had already grabbed Orochimaru's hand. Before he could even register the coldness of her touch, they had already entered a strange tunnel. Countless stars surrounded them, making it seem as though they had stepped into a vast universe. A space tunnel? A wormhole? Orochimaru, however, paid little attention to this. The sensation lasted only a brief moment before they arrived at the Akatsuki homeworld. The first thing he saw was the teleportation array beneath his feet and an ancient-looking plaza. Next, he noticed 2 men dressed in long robes, armed with weapons, their pale gray-white pupils staring at him. Members of the Akatsuki clan? Guards? Who are you? Kaguya, can these people be killed? Kill them. Chapter 408. The Akatsuki home planet was a place recorded in Orochimaru's memories, yet it had never been seen before. The architecture of this world appeared ancient on the surface, but inside, it was extraordinarily lavish. 2 members of the Akatsuki clan stood guard over the teleportation array, their expressions shifting to surprise when they saw Orochimaru and Kaguya suddenly materialize within it. This teleportation array allowed the Akatsuki clan to travel between planets that hosted a god tree, using different spatial coordinates. After the clan seized control of this planet, all entries and exits were strictly recorded. In other words, the 2 guards had no idea who these intruders were. Yet, judging by the newcomers' demeanor, it was clear that they knew exactly where they were. This only deepened the guards' confusion. Then, their gazes landed on Kaguya, her pale, gray-white pupils triggering a vague sense of familiarity within them. Kill, Kaguya commanded coldly. The moment the word left her lips, Orochimaru's figure vanished. Of course, Orochimaru had prepared thoroughly before coming to this planet. The Akatsuki were a clan that wielded spatial abilities and possessed lifespans far exceeding those of ordinary beings. They were regarded as gods within this universe. However, there was a stark difference between ordinary Akatsuki and those who had consumed the god tree's chakra fruit. Those who partook in the fruit gained divine bodies, rendering conventional techniques and weapons ineffective against them. On the other hand, Akatsuki who had never consumed the fruit were, aside from their spatial powers and longevity, no different from shinobi of Earth. A well-placed sword strike could still take their lives. The Flying Thunder God technique, developed by the second Hokage after countless battles, enabled instantaneous spatial jumps. Even though the 2 Akatsuki guards possessed space-related abilities, Orochimaru's sudden attack gave them no chance to react. 2 black rods pierced straight through their hearts. Shinobi, above all, specialized in assassination. After the Sage of 6 Paths founded the ninja sect, the prolonged wars on Earth gave rise to shinobi combat strategies that emphasized ambush and surprise attacks. Conversely, the Akatsuki home planet had been ruled by the clan for thousands of years following the civil strife a millennium ago. With no wars ever reaching their lands, only Momoshiki and his faction obsessed over the pursuit of power. As a result, these two battle-inexperienced Akatsuki were easily eliminated by Orochimaru. Longevity did not equate to invincibility. After inspecting the corpses, Orochimaru glanced at Kaguya. "With your strength, disposing of these should be easy, right?" "I can," Kaguya responded icily. With a casual wave of her right hand, the bloodstains on the corpses vanished. Ordinarily, space-time travel required an immense amount of chakra. However, using the teleportation array significantly reduced the energy consumption. Thus, even now, Kaguya retained plenty of strength. She cast the two corpses into the lava-filled space, and just as Orochimaru was about to speak, "Someone's coming!" Kaguya's cold voice cut through the air. As soon as the words left her lips, Orochimaru suddenly found himself standing in a vast space filled with towering hills. Beyond the hills, fierce winds kicked up waves of sand. With a separate dimension that we can enter at any time, infiltration missions just became much easier, Orochimaru remarked with a faint smile. "If they discover us, this place won't be safe," Kaguya stated calmly. Other members of the Akatsuki clan, those who possessed the Rinnegan, could forcefully enter Kaguya's dimensions at a cost. Therefore, her sphere spaces were not absolutely secure. Orochimaru nodded in understanding. Elsewhere. Not long after the two disappeared, the space near the teleportation portal distorted, and a dark rift split open. Two middle-aged men, clad in the same white robes, stepped out. Both possessed gray-white pupils, but one was tall and thin, while the other was short and stout. Judging by their attire, they too belonged to the Akatsuki clan. The taller man frowned upon arrival, veins bulging on his forehead as his gaze swept across the area. "Strange. The two of them have vanished without a trace. How could this be?" The shorter man hesitated before suggesting, "Could it be an enemy attack?" "Enemy? That's impossible. Those two have guarded this place for nearly 1,000 years without incident. Something's off. Regardless, we should report this to the higher-ups first. You stay here and keep searching, I'll be back soon." Hearing this, the taller man nodded, activating his dojutsu to scan the surroundings once more. Meanwhile, the shorter man stepped into the space-time rift and vanished. Elsewhere, in a massive town, two figures strolled forward at a leisurely pace. Orochimaru, having arrived via Yamatsu Hirasaka from the first sphere space, frowned slightly. The houses lining both sides of the street had their doors and windows tightly shut. The roads were eerily empty and silent. Although the surrounding architecture was relatively new, the stark contrast from Kaguya's descriptions made the stillness feel unsettling. It felt eerily similar to the blood mist era of Kirigakure. With that thought, Orochimaru's frown deepened. He crouched down, closing his eyes. The next moment, green markings spread across the corners of his eyes. In the shinobi world, sensory techniques typically detected living beings with chakra. However, by harnessing natural energy, Orochimaru could perceive all life forms within the town. In this town, 9 people possess chakra, one of them has even more chakra than you do right now. There are many ordinary civilians, but they're all inside those sealed houses. "I see them." Kaguya's gray-white veins surfaced around her pupils as she observed the town, her expression cold. "Orochimaru, what do you plan to do?" "Let's not rush. First, we find someone to interrogate." Chapter 409, The Akatsuki clan has a method to record the life signatures of its members, along with a unique ability to travel through space. So, just a few minutes after Orochimaru dealt with the two of them, members of the Akatsuki clan arrived to investigate. However, Orochimaru wasn't concerned. As long as they didn't realize the one who had returned was Kaguya, the infiltration plan could continue as planned. Finding an empty room, Orochimaru hesitated briefly before taking 2 steps forward. In an instant, the distinct characteristics of the Akatsuki clan appeared on him: silver-gray hair, gray pupils, and a white robe adorned with magatama patterns. "Is anyone there? Please open the door." After knocking on 2 doors in a row, he received no response. At the third house, looking at the tightly shut door, Orochimaru smirked coldly. "You're all standing behind the door, eavesdropping. Why not just open up?" Yet, there was still no movement from inside. It seems force is the only option. Orochimaru sighed helplessly at Kaguya before slowly raising his hand, placing it on the door. From his posture, it truly looked like he was preparing to break in. Orochimaru was never a good person to begin with. In a situation like this, it was already a rare show of patience that he hadn't simply kicked down the door. "No, don't do it. I'll open it now. Right away. Please don't act rashly." As if sensing Orochimaru's intent, a voice hurriedly responded from inside. The voice sounded like a young man in his 20s, filled with anxiety and fear. Orochimaru frowned slightly, feeling a hint of curiosity. What exactly is he so afraid of? When the door finally opened, his suspicions were confirmed. A young man, seemingly in his 20s, with a sickly complexion and dressed in tattered clothes, stood at the doorway, gripping the doorframe while looking at Orochimaru with terror in his eyes. His gaunt features and ragged attire made it clear he was poor and malnourished. Orochimaru pretended not to notice and strode into the room with Kaguya. The young man hurriedly shut the door behind them. Plop! The young man dropped to his knees, his voice trembling with desperation. "Sir, I am like this, but she's still young. If you must take someone, take me instead." After speaking, he began kowtowing frantically to Orochimaru. "Take you?" Orochimaru smirked. "What would I need you for? You make it sound like something grand is happening." He had only just stepped inside, and the man was already bowing in submission, clearly mistaking him for someone else. Hearing Orochimaru's response, the young man was momentarily stunned. He then glanced nervously at Kaguya, hesitating before cautiously asking, then, "Your Excellency, you're not here to take us to worship the God Tree?" "Worship the God Tree?" Orochimaru exchanged a glance with Kaguya and immediately understood the situation. He turned his gaze back to the young man. "Yes, we were indeed ordered to take you to worship the God Tree. Given your earlier request, I'll show some mercy and grant it. However..." Orochimaru's tone grew cold. Pretending no one was home wasn't the best way to greet us. The young man turned pale with fear and began kowtowing again, his expression full of panic. "My lord, please spare me. I beg for your forgiveness. We had no other choice." His voice cracked as he pleaded. "Oh?" Orochimaru remained calm. "So, you knew pretending to be absent wouldn't work, yet you still did it? Was it truly your only option?" The young man nodded bitterly, his face full of despair and helplessness. Orochimaru could understand. In the face of overwhelming power, the weak could only struggle in vain to protect those they cared about. But in the end, they were simply powerless. Still, doing nothing was never an option. After some subtle questioning, Orochimaru finally grasped the situation. This planet was much like Earth, not only inhabited by the Akatsuki clan but also by other races and civilians. However, after the last civil war, the Akatsuki clan had established absolute dominance over the planet. They had planted multiple god trees, and naturally, these trees needed to be nourished. But their method of worship was far crueler than Kaguya's. Each ritual required nearly 10,000 sacrifices. And such ceremonies could happen at any time. Apart from the Akatsuki clan, all other races and civilians were considered nothing more than offerings for the god tree. Yet, this planet's human population was already sparse compared to Earth. And after years of ritual sacrifices, their numbers had dwindled even further. To maintain a steady supply, the Akatsuki had no choice but to reduce the frequency of sacrifices. At the same time, they began raising humans in captivity, treating them like livestock. Yes, livestock. Just like pigs and sheep raised for slaughter. Each person had an assigned number and was managed by a specific akatsuki overseer. In a sense, these people were no longer human. They were merely nutrients for the Akatsuki clan's god trees. And the most terrifying part? From birth, each captive was branded with a seal similar to the Hiraition no Jutsu mark, preventing any chance of escape. No matter how far they ran, they would be caught within a day. And once captured, their fate would be worse than death. I see. After gathering the information he needed, Orochimaru casually patted the young man on the shoulder, then turned to leave with Kaguya. The young man was utterly dumbfounded. Just like that, he left? Wasn't he here to take us to the god tree for sacrifice? Chapter 410. After stepping outside, Orochimaru glanced at Kaguya beside him and said calmly, "It seems that all of your father's people must be dead." "I expected as much," Kaguya replied indifferently. "No wonder you didn't even hesitate when you told me to kill those two the moment we arrived." "So that's what happened. A coup d'état, if it succeeds, eliminating the opposing side is a perfectly normal outcome, isn't it?" "That's true." Orochimaru smirked. "Let's go. Time to get to work." Akatsuki's home planet, Flying Tree Country. This was an ancient nation. The architecture in the town center resembled the grand palaces of royalty. On this planet, only the Akatsuki clan was deemed worthy of such treatment. At this moment, 9 people sat within the main hall of the central building, all clad in the robes of the Akatsuki clan. However, the man seated at the highest position had additional ornate decorations on his robe. He was the temporary leader of this town, Akatsuki Takeshi. What? The 2 guards stationed at the teleportation portal have disappeared? Akatsuki Takeshi frowned upon hearing the report. He had once been a subordinate of Kaguya's father. After the rebellion 1,000 years ago, Momoshiki's father sought to exterminate all of Kaguya's father's followers. In order to survive, Takeshi had no choice but to swear loyalty to the opposing side. As luck would have it, his new master required someone to manage the city, so he was reluctantly accepted. Moreover, due to the shortage of manpower, he was even granted a god fruit. This delighted him beyond words. After all, a god tree required vast amounts of time and countless sacrifices to bear its fruit. From 1,000 years ago until now, only 2 batches of divine fruit had ever been produced. Thus, upon receiving one, Takeshi devoted himself wholeheartedly to Akatsuki Momoshiki's service. Hearing that the guards were missing, his expression turned serious. It was a matter concerning the safety of the other god trees. They never abandoned their posts without reason. I suspect. Akatsuki Takeshi made his decision immediately. Deploy all remaining clan members to find them. Bring them back alive if possible. If they're dead, I want their corpses. Yes. The 8 subordinates acknowledged the order and then began conversing among themselves. They were all Takeshi's trusted aides, having received a portion of his chakra, so they were eager to assist him. Ironically, Orochimaru had always believed the Akatsuki clan to be a superior race, capable of world-ending destruction with just a single member. But reality was different. Aside from their long lifespan and their ability to traverse space, their raw combat power wasn't significantly beyond that of a Kaguya-level warrior. The modern Akatsuki clan's strength no longer came from innate ability but from god trees and god fruits. Over time, they had become utterly dependent on chakra. More importantly, their method of utilizing chakra was completely different from that of ninjas on Earth. The current Akatsuki clan was so selfish that even among their own people, only a select few possessed chakra. As a result, those few wielded an immense amount of chakra. And because Akatsuki Momoshiki ruled this planet, it had long since become an Akatsuki world, one that had known no war for generations. For many reasons, their chakra usage had remained crude, with little refinement. Their strategy? Massive chakra expenditure. Their techniques were overwhelming, brute force big moves that consumed absurd amounts of chakra with no efficiency or skill. By contrast, Earth's ninjas, influenced by the Sage of 6 Paths, had made chakra widespread. But since they were still human, their individual chakra reserves were far more limited. This limitation led to the development of intricate ninjutsu that conserve chakra. Of course, if an Earth ninja were to directly face an Akatsuki clan member with chakra, the outcome would be like an egg smashing against a rock. The reason was simple: those few Akatsuki members who possessed chakra had an absurd amount of it due to their bloodline. Moreover, nearly all of them had truth-seeking orbs. Against them, conventional chakra-based elemental jutsu were utterly ineffective. To harm them, one would have to rely on senjutsu or taijutsu. Or, of course, sealing techniques. Back to the main hall. After watching his subordinates leave, Akatsuki Takeshi exhaled in relief. Just as he was about to stand and attend to his next task, a sudden sense of unease washed over him. His heart skipped a beat. Ah! Two agonized screams erupted from outside the palace, confirming his worst fears. He recognized the voices. They belonged to the very subordinates who had just left. His subordinates, Akatsuki clan members, had been killed? Akatsuki Takeshi's expression darkened as he leapt outside. What he saw made him frown. 6 remaining Akatsuki members had formed a defensive circle, surrounding a white-haired man wielding a black sword. At the man's feet lay the corpses of 2 Akatsuki warriors. Takeshi's gaze landed on the black sword. It was a truth-seeking orb weapon. How does this man have a truth-seeking orb? Takeshi was utterly bewildered. After all, not every Akatsuki possessed chakra. And this stranger, someone he had never seen before, was clearly not one of Momoshiki's subordinates. With that realization, Akatsuki Takeshi narrowed his eyes and shouted, "You don't look like one of Momoshiki's men. Who are you?" The man smirked. "You're about to die. What's the point of knowing?" Chapter 411, Akatsuki Takeshi shouted in anger, using his space-time abilities to teleport outside the main hall, keeping a safe distance from Orochimaru. Fortunately, despite his rage, he didn't act recklessly the moment he arrived. After all, anyone who has survived this long isn't a fool. The fact that the intruder had managed to enter undetected before Takeshi even noticed, and had effortlessly killed 2 of his subordinates while all 8 of them were present, how could such a person be simple? Even with all 8 subordinates working together, defeating him wouldn't be easy. Observing Takeshi's stance, Orochimaru casually stood in place, quickly making a judgment in his mind. While the Akatsuki clan possessed space-time abilities and chakra, their overall combat power didn't seem particularly strong. At best, they were like Jinchuriki who could wield Inyon Release. The only exception was Takeshi. His strength actually surpassed Kagaya at full power. Not bad. After carefully analyzing Takeshi's fighting style, Orochimaru stroked his chin and smirked. However, it seems you've become Momoshiki's lapdog. Where's your master? Tell him to come out and meet me. You arrogant fool, kill him. Akatsuki Takeshi could no longer suppress his fury. Although Orochimaru's origins were unclear, his tone and demeanor were utterly condescending. He had provoked Takeshi again and again. Who could tolerate such humiliation? Following the order, 6 Akatsuki clan members stepped forward, their expression solemn. At the same time, 6 black rods materialized in their hands. The surrounding space subtly distorted. Earlier, Orochimaru had taken them by surprise, appearing out of nowhere to launch a sneak attack. But now, they were prepared. They wouldn't allow it to happen again. As expected, you have some skill. Sensing the fluctuations in space, Orochimaru's lips curled slightly. The only reason he had been able to instantly kill 2 of them before was because of the element of surprise provided by the Flying Thunder God technique. However, in a direct confrontation, the practicality of that technique was inferior to the Akatsuki clan's space-time abilities. And now, with the 6 Akatsuki members actively distorting every inch of space within a 10-mile radius, the Flying Thunder God technique was completely neutralized. Seeing that Orochimaru no longer vanished as suddenly as before, a sneer appeared on the faces of the Akatsuki clan members. As we thought, he was relying on space-time techniques before. Die! 3 of them lunged forward, already picturing the moment when Orochimaru would be impaled through the heart. But in the next instant, poof! Gray bones suddenly sprouted from their bodies. Two Akatsuki clan members looked down in shock, their faces filled with disbelief. Before they could react, their bodies began to disintegrate from the wounds, crumbling into dust. Dead, just like that? This guy had a companion? The Akatsuki clan possessed the purest Byakugan, able to perceive everything. But due to their reliance on the power of the God Tree and their space-time abilities, their physical reflexes had dulled. Just now, all of their attention had been focused on Orochimaru. They hadn't expected another enemy to be present. The Flying Thunder God technique may be unusable, but that doesn't mean my other techniques are affected. Glancing at the stunned opponents, Orochimaru wasted no time. Before they could locate Kagaya's position, he tossed several truth-seeking orbs forward. Against the Akatsuki clan, the most effective weapons were Senjutsu and Taijutsu. And fortunately, Orochimaru lacked neither. Thus, against the Akatsuki, he felt no fear. Akatsuki Takeshi's brows furrowed, veins bulging around his Byakugan. Before the truth-seeking orbs could reach him, the surrounding scenery abruptly shifted. This was a world of ice and snow, just like Kagaya's frozen dimension. The truth-seeking orbs vanished, and Orochimaru was pulled inside. At the same time, Takeshi and his four remaining subordinates floated in the air, their eyes locked onto the figure emerging from the space rift behind Orochimaru. You! Kagaya? Orochimaru smirked. I'll leave this guy to you. I'll handle the rest. Fine. Kagaya responded indifferently. Hearing her reply, Orochimaru was slightly surprised. With Kagaya's current state, she shouldn't be Takeshi's match in combat. Yet she didn't hesitate at all. Orochimaru shook his head, pushing the thought aside as he focused on dealing with the other Akatsuki members. In terms of raw speed, he wasn't necessarily faster than them. But... swoosh! A flash of sword light. An Akatsuki member fell instantly. Wah! You bastard! Analyzing energy medium. Calculation complete. Redefining energy source. Definition confirmed. Target gene sequence, rewriting in progress. Rewriting complete. That's another one down. Orochimaru grinned. Goodbye. Swoosh! Another flash of sword light. Another Akatsuki member fell on the spot. The remaining Akatsuki clan members were horrified. They couldn't comprehend Orochimaru's attack methods at all. Before they could react, another truth-seeking orb shot toward them. Boom! The massive explosion sent dazzling light across the frozen sky, making the icy landscape appear even more crystalline. Chapter 412, The Akatsuki clan possesses chakra and is formidable in combat. Even with Orochimaru's current strength, defeating one in a direct battle would take considerable time. Therefore, using biological engines to lock onto targets and rewrite them is the fastest way to eliminate them. The Akatsuki clan is considered an advanced race. As long as they possess chakra, even if they haven't consumed a complete God Tree fruit, their durability is at least on par with Naruto in his prime. Fortunately, with the power Orochimaru wields now, completely killing them is still relatively easy. The ultimate combination of six paths power, Senjutsu, and biological engines has made Orochimaru's combat strength absurdly high. Any target rewritten by Orochimaru's biological engine will temporarily lose control. Not only would they be unable to defend or counterattack, but they couldn't even extract chakra. One after another, bodies fell from the sky. At this point, if Orochimaru failed to finish them off, it would be nothing short of disgraceful. Meanwhile, on Earth, in the central square of the Land of Frost, a security perimeter spanning 1 kilometer had been established around the area. Near the teleportation portal, countless troops were gathering. The army mainly consisted of clones and white Zetsu. Under the command of Zetsu and Mi, they were organizing into formations with remarkable precision. Among them, 100,000 white Zetsu had been deployed, along with 20,000 clones. The teleportation portal had 16 corners, each marked by a circular pillar topped with an energy orb. Chakra could be injected into these orbs to activate the portal. At this moment, 16 Kage-level experts stood beside the pillars, infusing chakra into them. Once you pass through, stay alert. Standing beside the teleportation portal, Tsunade, draped in a cloak, gave instructions to me. This time, Mi would be traveling with the army. As his Namo mother, she naturally felt the need to pay special attention to him. Don't worry. With Dad leading the way, nothing will go wrong. Mi waved a hand dismissively. Now that he was an adult, he fully understood just how powerful Orochimaru was. He had absolute confidence in his father. Lord Danzo! Lord Danzo! The third Hokage, Danzo, and several high-ranking Konoha officials appeared beside the teleportation portal. As he examined the massive structure, excitement flickered in Danzo's eyes. So, besides this world, there were other planets inhabited by beings like the Akatsuki? At this moment, he couldn't help but admire Orochimaru. Not only had he acquired immense power, but he had also created such a massive army. If Orochimaru wanted to unify the entire shinobi world, this force alone would be enough. And yet, instead of focusing on Earth, he had set his sights on an interplanetary war? Where did this man find the time and energy for all of this? But in the end, Danzo didn't concern himself with such matters. Because this time, it was still Orochimaru and his son who were leading the war. A war between planets. As time passed, countless soldiers, carrying vast amounts of supplies, began teleporting to the Akatsuki ancestral planet. Their mission was to establish a base and gather intelligence. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, Orochimaru's fight was nearing its conclusion. Watching his subordinates fall one after another, Akatsuki Takeshi remained unfazed. Instead, he reabsorbed their chakra before they perished. At that moment, his aura surged explosively. His expression darkened as he shot Kagaya a sharp look, then slowly rolled up his sleeves. A crimson rinnegan without tomo gleamed on the palm of his hand, the same type of eye that Momoshiki possessed. However, while Momoshiki had 3, Takeshi had only 1. Even without analyzing it in detail, Orochimaru could tell that the power within this red rinnegan far surpassed the lavender pair possessed by the Sage of 6 Paths. Akatsuki Takeshi's gray pupils locked onto Orochimaru. His long silver hair swayed despite the absence of wind. I don't know what kind of ability you just used. But today, you must die. Kagaya's cold voice echoed in the air, her aura rising sharply. To her, the Akatsuki of this planet were not worthy of mercy. Oh? Then allow me to end this battle for you. Sensing the subtle distortions in space, Orochimaru chuckled. The second Hokage truly was a genius. Although the Flying Thunder God technique, originally derived from the Akatsuki clan's space-time abilities, was a relatively simple jutsu, its impact was profound. Right now, his opponent was forced to remain on guard at all times, wary of its usage. This alone was proof that they feared the Flying Thunder God technique. In other words, the second Hokage had developed a technique that even the so-called gods feared, using only human ingenuity? It was an undeniable feat. Of course, Orochimaru also understood that what they feared wasn't the Flying Thunder God technique itself, but rather the fact that he was the one wielding it. After all, simply having the ability to teleport wasn't enough to make someone dangerous. It was how one used it that made the difference. For example, if the fourth Hokage used the Flying Thunder God technique, he might be able to launch attacks. But would those attacks be effective? That was a question open for debate. While Orochimaru pondered, Kagaya had already enveloped herself in chakra and rushed toward Akatsuki Takeshi. Calculating energy medium. Yasagami Kajiki. Kagaya unleashed a devastating physical assault, maximizing her chakra output to perform an extraordinary taijutsu technique that only she could use. Countless fists rained down like a violent storm. Damn it, my chakra. Chapter 413, Every punch was a killing blow. There wasn't even enough space for a mouse to escape. Ordinarily, an attack like this would mean nothing to Akatsuki Takeshi. After all, he was also a member of the Akatsuki clan and possessed more chakra than Kagaya. But just as he attempted to use his chakra to counterattack, he suddenly realized his chakra was gone. Why is this happening? Bang! 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 Before he could even react, a barrage of fists slammed into him with overwhelming force. Ah! Akatsuki Takeshi let out countless agonized screams. Bang! The final punch sent him flying, crashing heavily to the ground. As he looked up, Kagaya approached, her expression cold, a gray bone in her hand. Akatsuki Takeshi's eyes widened in disbelief. Chakra energy exists to drive those who wield it to constantly seek greater power, creating a strict hierarchy. Especially at the level of those who can wield the truth-seeking orbs, the power hierarchy becomes even more distinct. This is because the density of chakra granted by a single god tree fruit is inferior to that of someone who has consumed two. Thus, those who have already obtained the power of the divine fruit must continue consuming more to maintain their superiority. The more divine fruits consumed, the stronger one's combat prowess. This was an unquestioned truth among the Akatsuki. And yet, why is this happening? Akatsuki Takeshi was completely confused. At this moment, his Byakugan activated involuntarily. Damn it, that long-haired guy? The thought lasted only a second, because Kagaya had already arrived in front of him, the gray bone in her hand poised to strike. The moment Takeshi saw that bone, his expression twisted in terror. Yes, he had eaten a god tree fruit. Yes, he had a divine body. But, the idea that he was unkillable, that the only way to stop him was through sealing, was nothing more than a misconception caused by the Sage of Six Paths' inability to destroy Kagaya completely. Against Kagaya's all-killing ash bones, even gods would disintegrate upon contact. And after his body collapsed, with Kagaya's current level of power, even his soul wouldn't be able to escape. It's over. I'll deal with you first. No! Don't kill me! Akatsuki Takeshi immediately begged for mercy. I watched you grow up. Please, I beg you, don't kill me. Mama Shiki and I were only doing this for. Go to hell. Before he could finish his plea, a black rod suddenly shot from his hand, aimed directly at Kagaya's heart. It was clear that some of his chakra had recovered. Buzz! An invisible force suddenly enveloped his body. Takeshi's hand, gripping the black rod, froze in midair, unable to move. Whoosh! With a swift motion, Kagaya swung her blade and effortlessly severed Takeshi's hand. This is space confinement? Akatsuki Takeshi could hardly believe it. Although my control over space may not be as refined as yours, my research into space-time abilities is not necessarily inferior to yours. A sly smile played on Orochimaru's lips as he appeared beside Kagaya. Without a doubt, he was the one who had just activated the space confinement technique. He had been on guard against a last-ditch counterattack from Takeshi. Kagaya, don't lose focus during a fight. Damn it! Akatsuki Takeshi clutched his severed arm, wanting to say something, but no words came out. He had never expected his opponent to use such a basic technique like space confinement against him. For the Akatsuki clan, space confinement was a low-level ability. And yet, it had completely caught him off guard. Orochimaru had already deduced that Takeshi couldn't use the Flying Thunder God technique. However, his space-time abilities were superior to Orochimaru's, making it a miracle that the space confinement had even worked at all. Sustaining the effect for a full 5 seconds? That was impossible. It was like playing a game where a low-level player managed to land a stun attack on a higher-level opponent with superior equipment. A higher level and better gear naturally meant stronger resistance. As a result, the stun duration was drastically reduced. So Orochimaru never expected to hold Takeshi for 5 seconds, just 1 second was enough. Die! Having suffered a counterattack from Takeshi, Kagaya stopped wasting words and threw the gray bone directly at him. Takeshi barely managed to evade, but before he could recover, a shadow flickered in front of him. A black rod pierced straight through his shoulder. "You fool! Did you forget to regain control of space?" Seeing Orochimaru appear using the Flying Thunder God technique, Takashi gritted his teeth in rage. Just moments ago, his chakra had suddenly vanished, and the surrounding space had become distorted. Naturally, this meant he had lost control over it. Before he could react, a massive tree suddenly rose up behind him. Thick branches coiled around his body, binding him tightly. At the same time, countless black rods pierced into him one after another. Clang! 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 Each rod stabbed deep into his flesh, pinning him firmly to the tree. Damn! A cold palm suddenly pressed against his lower abdomen. "Your chakra belongs to me." Boom! A massive surge of chakra exploded from Takashi's body, flowing directly into Kaguya through her icy palm. Her power was rapidly being restored. That's one down. Chapter 414, the black rods condensed from the truth-seeking orbs had the ability to disrupt chakra. Even the Akatsuki clan wasn't immune to this interference. Moreover, their bodies consisted purely of chakra, without an independent life force like that of the tailed beasts. As a result, once immobilized by Orochimaru, they wouldn't even have the chance to resist. Leave him alive. He'll be useful later. Understood. 2 hours later. This wasn't the same square where the teleportation portal had been located earlier. This was a proper town square, one that truly belonged to this settlement. The plaza was so vast that its boundaries were impossible to see at a glance. Ordinarily, it would appear empty, stretching endlessly into the distance. But now, surprisingly, a large crowd had gathered. At a rough estimate, there were at least several thousand people. Most of them wore tattered clothes, their appearances reflecting a life of hardship. There was no doubt they were ordinary humans, kept in captivity by the Akatsuki clan. Living under the rule of a race that relentlessly pursued power, their lives were naturally miserable. At this moment, the captives had formed a loose circle, murmuring amongst themselves as they observed the scene at the center. Their expressions varied: fear, anxiety, shock, disbelief, hope, an array of emotions flickered across their faces. Wait, aren't those two from the Akatsuki clan? Why are they? Yeah, he actually killed his own kind. What's going on? Is this going to affect us? Who knows, maybe they're here to help us. Don't be ridiculous. Akatsuki Momoshiki's power is far beyond anything mere mortals can resist. Exactly. If anything, we should be afraid. Wait, that woman, she looks familiar. Where have I seen her before? Huh. Now that you mention it, she does look familiar. Ah. I remember. That's Akatsuki Kaguya. I've seen her portrait before. She was once a princess of the Akatsuki clan. What? A princess of the Akatsuki clan? Yes. And I've heard that she was different from the others. Is she here to save us? As the crowd whispered among themselves, Orochimaru, seated at the center of it all, paid them no mind. At the moment, he was leisurely sipping tea. 2 chairs, a table, and a tea set rested before him. Pouring himself another cup, he casually slid one in front of Kaguya. Want a drink? I'm not thirsty, Kaguya replied coldly. With her divine body, she no longer needed to eat or drink. It wasn't a lie, it was simply unnecessary. Even a god should know how to enjoy life. Orochimaru smirked. And as for our situation, don't be nervous. We will win this battle. Are you that confident? Kaguya cast him an indifferent glance. She possessed the purest Byakugan, yet even she couldn't see the source of Orochimaru's power. Could he really help her kill these clan members without using chakra? It was utterly incomprehensible. Of course. Orochimaru's lips curled into a grin. If I didn't have that level of confidence, I wouldn't have come here. Orochimaru, you truly are a peculiar man. Expressionless, Kagaya lifted the teacup and took a sip. You've said that many times. Orochimaru chuckled. What? Have you become my admirer? Not even close, Kagaya replied flatly. Then tell me, what are you thinking about right now? Nothing in particular. Ha, you really are a cold and boring woman. Orochimaru laughed, shaking his head before rising from his seat. In the center of the square, a massive wooden cross stood tall. Nailed to it with black rods, like some kind of blasphemous effigy, was Akatsuki Takeshi, completely drained of chakra. At the foot of the cross, 8 lifeless bodies lay scattered across the ground. As Orochimaru stood, the chattering of the onlookers came to an abrupt halt. The massive square fell into eerie silence. Orochimaru gazed at Takeshi, who now looked no better than a dying dog, then smirked and casually raised a hand toward a disheveled man in the crowd. Before the man could react, Orochimaru lifted him into the air with ease. If you don't want to die, leave immediately. With that, he tossed the man aside. Orochimaru hadn't lowered his voice, ensuring that everyone in the vicinity heard him loud and clear. These ordinary humans had never even considered resisting the Akatsuki clan. The sight of all those corpses had simply been too shocking, drawing them in despite their fear. But now, upon hearing that their own lives were at risk, how could they possibly stay? Within moments, the square emptied as the terrified captives fled in all directions. However, a handful of bolder individuals chose to remain, watching cautiously from a distance, eager to see what would happen next. Before long, a spatial rift tore open. Several robed Akatsuki clan members stepped forth. Ha ha ha. Finally, they've arrived. Orochimaru chuckled softly, completely unbothered by their appearance. Kagaya, too, remained seated, expression calm as she gently blew on her tea. After spending half a year on Earth alongside Orochimaru, she had come to understand chakra and natural energy better than ever. The difference between chakra infused with natural energy and chakra without it was like night and day. Back then, even when Hagoromo and Himura had only received a fraction of her chakra, their power had surged after learning the senjutsu of Mount Maiboku, allowing them to rival her in battle. And now, facing these Akatsuki clansmen, who had never learned senjutsu, even in her current weakened state, she was confident in her ability to defeat them. Let alone Orochimaru, who possessed senjutsu-enhanced chakra. The newly arrived Akatsuki members, however, did not attack immediately. Instead, they remained standing in place, their heads slightly lowered, as if awaiting the arrival of someone of great importance. Then, emerging from the spatial rift, a familiar yet unfamiliar figure stepped forward, radiating authority, like the stars surrounding the moon. Kagaya? So it really is you? A sinister chuckle echoed through the square. Heh. I never thought that a coward who only knows how to run away would actually dare to return. Chapter 415, a calm and elegant voice reached the ears of the two. The disdain and mockery in his tone were unmistakable. Immediately after, a young man in a white robe, his pale gray-white eyes gleaming, slowly stepped out of the spatial rift. The white robe was the standard attire of the Akatsuki clan, though it lacked the 6-tomo pattern that adorned Kagaya's. Behind him stood a burly man, wielding a massive red battle axe. There was no doubt Akatsuki Momoshiki and Akatsuki Kinshiki had arrived. Even Kagaya feared these beings. As Momoshiki emerged, he instinctively scanned the surroundings. The moment he took in the situation, his brows furrowed. The 8 clan members stationed here were all dead. And Akatsuki Takeshi was barely clinging to life? Save, help me! Takeshi, sensing Momoshiki's arrival, hoarsely cried out for aid. His chakra had been completely drained by Kagaya, his body impaled by black rods and suspended midair. Every so often, Orochimaru would send a blade slashing through him from a distance. This torture had lasted for hours. Life at this point was worse than death. Had the Akatsuki not been immune to Jinjutsu, Orochimaru could have simply used a technique like Tsukuyomi, sparing himself the effort. But that wasn't an option. A new face? Momoshiki completely ignored Takeshi's plea, his attention instead shifting to Orochimaru. He doesn't seem to be of the Akatsuki clan, yet his power isn't weak. Momoshiki grinned, then turned to Kaguya. So this is why you dared to return? Because of him? Kaguya ignored him completely. Where is my father's grave? She asked coldly. When she was still an innocent girl, she had fled to Earth to escape the civil war within the Akatsuki clan. She had watched her parents perish before her very eyes. One of her reasons for returning was to find their remains, even if all that was left was a humble grave. But the moment Momoshiki heard her words, he burst into laughter. Your father? Ha! Who knows? The sight of Momoshiki alone filled Kaguya with a mixture of fear and hatred. She had only been suppressing it because of Orochimaru's presence. But now, at his words, she could no longer hold herself back. I'll kill you. Kaguya's chakra surged violently. A gray bone materialized in her palm. Without hesitation, she launched an all-killing ash bone straight at Momoshiki. A lethal move from the very start. Although the all-killing ash bones weren't particularly fast, about the same as a kunai, their devastating collapse-inducing properties, combined with Kaguya's high-purity Byakugan predicting the enemy's movements, made them one of her strongest attacks. But despite being an Akatsuki himself, Momoshiki showed no concern whatsoever toward her attack. He didn't even bother dodging. Instead, he casually waved his hand, and an invisible force distorted the air. The gray bone veered off course inexplicably. Bang! The bone impaled the ground behind Momoshiki, instantly reducing a large portion of the land to dust. Thousands of years have passed, yet you're still this naive. An attack like this? Child's play. Momoshiki's voice dripped with contempt. To ordinary shinobi, all-killing ash bones were an ultimate technique. To Momoshiki, they weren't even worth acknowledging. Watching Momoshiki effortlessly redirect the attack, Orochimaru finally understood. This was why Kaguya feared him. This man's power was on a completely different level. Die! Momoshiki's words only fueled Kaguya's rage. Her hair billowed wildly. She raised both hands, her palms manifesting more gray bones, ready to strike again. But at that moment, a hand grasped her wrist. Wait! Orochimaru? Kaguya turned, only to see Orochimaru looking at her with his signature sinister smirk. Don't get so worked up. Leave him to me. Momoshiki's gaze sharpened. So it was you who used Takeshi to lure me here. He had been meditating in his own domain when Takeshi's distress signal reached him. And then? He had sensed the master-servant connection between them sever. Clearly, someone had orchestrated this. Without overthinking it, he had come immediately. Yet now, looking at Orochimaru, his chakra wasn't even on Kaguya's level. And yet, this man had defeated Takeshi and his 8 subordinates? It didn't add up. This made no sense. Orochimaru chuckled. It doesn't matter whether I did or didn't. You're here now, aren't you? Haha. That's true. Momoshiki laughed. Well then, since you have the nerve to return, hand over the power of the God Tree. Orochimaru's smirk deepened. That depends on whether you have the strength to take it. Casually raising his hand. Boom! The truth-seeking orbs on Takeshi's body instantly activated, reducing him to nothingness. Momoshiki's expression darkened. Just as he was about to speak, the scenery around him shifted instantly. A space-time technique? Momoshiki's brows furrowed. Was Kaguya trying to protect the insignificant mortals in the square? His gaze swept across the barren, moon-like landscape that now surrounded them. A sneer tugged at his lips. Protecting mortals? To Akatsuki Momoshiki, such a thing was utterly foolish. Slowly, he raised his hands. Various elemental chakra began swirling around him. Sensing this, the other Akatsuki clan members quickly took to the skies, distancing themselves from the battlefield. A mere lowly creature dares challenge the majesty of a god? Chapter 416, the Akatsuki clan called themselves gods. And their combat prowess was, indeed, no different from the deities of legend. Just like now. As soon as Momoshiki finished speaking, he merely raised his hand, and immediately, dark clouds filled the sky. Around him, flames roared like dragons, lightning crackled like serpents, and violent tornadoes churned in every direction. The next second, countless torrents of chakra rained down upon Orochimaru, as if there were no limit to them. With just a wave of his hand, he unleashed super S-rank ninjutsu, vastly superior to ordinary S-rank techniques. Yet, despite the overwhelming attack, Orochimaru and Kagaya remained utterly still. Even as the sky and earth were torn asunder and the land was ravaged beyond recognition, they did not move an inch. The truth-seeking orb's barrier could not be broken by mere ninjutsu of this level. Boom! 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 Lightning and firestorms raged, sand and rock were hurled into the air, and the entire battlefield trembled. And then, after a single round of devastating attacks, Orochimaru's hoarse voice rang out from within the destruction. Please, if you're going to deal with lowly creatures like us, at least try to be serious. An attack of this level? Are we playing children's games? What? Akatsuki Momoshiki's expression darkened in fury. That was exactly what he had said earlier. Humph, you think you're clever? Let's see how your so-called truth-seeking orbs handle this. Floating in midair, Momoshiki raised one hand toward the sky. In an instant, a massive, purple-black chakra sphere began forming above him, quickly expanding to cover the entire battlefield. A tailed beast bomb. A ridiculously massive one. If it were to be detonated in Konoha, the entire village would be obliterated. Unlike Chibaku Tensei, which merely left ruins, this attack would leave nothing behind. This is bad. Get out of here. Was he planning to use an attack of this level from the start? The other Akatsuki clan members who had been pulled into this space by Kagaya immediately fled in panic at the sight of the colossal tailed beast bomb. For those who couldn't wield truth-seeking orbs, this technique was certain death. Meanwhile, Orochimaru smiled casually, and Kagaya, seeming to understand his intent, walked over to stand beside him. The truth-seeking orbs that had been forming a shield around them suddenly merged together, transforming into a massive black sphere, enveloping both of them completely. Now, within the desolate battlefield, only a single black dome remained, surrounded by the scattered corpses of the Akatsuki clan members who had been trapped in this space. Boom! The tailed beast bomb struck the ground, shaking the heavens and splitting the land apart. For a moment, the very world seemed to change color. The earth trembled violently. The surrounding terrain was reduced to rubble. Even the hardest stone was pulverized into dust beneath the sheer force of the explosion. The remains of Akatsuki Takeshi and his 8 subordinates, unprotected, were instantly vaporized, their existence erased from the universe forever. No one knew how long had passed. Slowly, the aftermath of the explosion faded, and the thick smoke gradually dispersed. The battlefield was left with a massive crater, spanning tens of kilometers, resembling the impact site of a meteor. And at its very center, Orochimaru and Kagaya still stood, completely unharmed. Akatsuki Momoshiki descended from the sky, his gaze sweeping over the scene. His brows furrowed slightly. Orochimaru smirked. How dull, it's always the same pattern with you. Before Momoshiki could react, Orochimaru had already leaped into the air. A white robe, a black sword, and golden snake-like eyes. Momoshiki's frown eased into a smirk. Close combat? You think you can challenge a Byakugan user at this level? To the Akatsuki, engaging in taijutsu against a high-level Byakugan wielder was suicide. At the same time, the other Akatsuki clan members who had retreated to escape the explosion had begun returning to the battlefield. Without waiting for Momoshiki's command, they charged toward Orochimaru without hesitation. Each of them soared through the air, wielding long black rods. For any chakra-based opponent, regardless of strength, being pierced by a black rod would significantly weaken their combat ability. Momoshiki knew this all too well. A massive black sphere suddenly burst forth from Orochimaru's palm. Bzzzt. Blinding light and violent air vibrations erupted simultaneously. The 6 paths enhanced senjutsu was far beyond ordinary ninjutsu. This is... No! Something's wrong. The surrounding akatsuki immediately reacted, closing their eyes and attempting to solidify space around themselves. But... whoosh! At the very same moment, the truth-seeking orbs around Orochimaru fragmented, transforming into dozens of black rods and shooting outward in every direction. Poof! 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 Every single shot hit its mark. Impossible. As the blinding light dissipated, Momoshiki's expression shifted. In the sky, the Akatsuki warriors he had brought with him had all fallen to the ground. Although they hadn't been killed outright, each of them had a gray bone embedded in their body. Kaguya. She had landed a direct hit with her all-killing ash bones. The warriors whom Orochimaru had knocked out of the sky had been unable to resist Kaguya's finishing blow. Damn it! I was actually outplayed by Kaguya. Momoshiki's thoughts raced, realizing that Kaguya had to be dealt with first. But at that moment, Orochimaru was already in front of him, sword raised. What a pity, looks like you're the only one left. No, I'm still here. Whoosh! Suddenly, a red battle axe swung into Orochimaru's path. Clang! A metallic clash rang out as sword met axe. Orochimaru twisted midair, using the impact to propel himself backward. His golden snake eyes locked onto the new arrival. Akatsuki Kinshiki. Chapter 417, Is Combat Experience Useful? Of course! When people debate who is stronger, Madara or Kaguya, the core argument often revolves around combat experience. One was an Uchiha genius who had survived countless battles during the Warring States period. The other was a naive princess, someone who had barely fought and had been sealed away for thousands of years. Based purely on combat experience, Kaguya shouldn't be a match for Madara. But as stated before, there was an essential difference between them. One was a god, the other a human. Humans cannot kill gods. But gods can easily kill humans. This was a gap that combat experience alone could never bridge, which was why Madara could never defeat Kaguya. And now, a similar gap in combat experience existed between the two sides. On one side were the Akatsuki, beings who had lived in peace for millennia, obsessed only with the pursuit of power. On the other was Orochimaru, a man who had survived endless wars. When both sides possessed the same power, when they were capable of killing each other at any moment, combat experience became the deciding factor. The Akatsuki's combat style was primitive. They relied entirely on overwhelming force to crush their opponents. Even in hand-to-hand combat, they depended solely on absolute speed and strength. There was no strategy involved, nothing but brute force. And because of that, with one White Rage technique and Kaguya's all-killing ash bones, Orochimaru had already wiped out most of Momoshiki's subordinates. At this moment, Orochimaru's gaze fell upon Akatsuki Kinshiki standing before him. And his lips curled into a smile. Without hesitation, he launched his black sword forward, aiming straight for Kinshiki. At the same time, he drew the Kusanagi sword, preparing for close-quarters combat. Whoosh! Almost simultaneously, Akatsuki Momoshiki raised his hands. The chakra orbs forming in his palms launched toward Orochimaru in rapid succession. Momoshiki, his red rinnegan embedded in both palms, possessed infinite power. His right palm absorbed all ninjutsu. His left palm amplified the absorbed energy and fired it back with devastating force. Even without absorbing attacks, he could still fire chakra cannons as powerful as tailed beast bombs. These chakra blasts were like solid steel spheres, utterly indestructible. Seeing the incoming attack, Orochimaru reacted instantly. As he retreated midair, he commanded his truth-seeking orbs to intercept the chakra orbs. Whoosh! Boom! 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 The truth-seeking orbs collided with the chakra blasts, causing violent tremors but no explosions. Orochimaru's truth-seeking orbs were formed from his own power. They were essentially limitless. Because of that, he had no fear of being drained. Deflecting Momoshiki's attacks, Orochimaru suddenly reversed course. Instead of retreating, he rushed forward. His body spun midair, and his sword slashed downward with unstoppable momentum. Akatsuki Kinshiki immediately moved to protect Momoshiki. Clang! A sharp metallic clash rang out. Buzz! A wave of invisible energy pulsed outward. Space confinement had activated again. If swordsmanship wasn't enough, pupil power would compensate. Orochimaru's 6 paths enhanced space confinement made him nearly invincible in a one-on-one fight. Akatsuki Kinshiki was one of the last remaining warriors of the Akatsuki clan. A guardian, a caretaker to Momoshiki. His weapon, a red ring, could transform into various deadly forms. His raw power was immense, capable of shattering the earth and ripping through anything. However, his control over space-time abilities was inferior even to Akatsuki Takeshi. And Orochimaru was not the type of ninja who would engage in a pure contest of raw power. The moment space confinement took hold, multiple sword slashes cut through the air. Blood splattered. Bang! Bang! The instant Kinshiki regained movement, Orochimaru kicked him with both feet, launching him violently backward. This guy. Watching from a distance, Momoshiki frowned deeply. Kinshiki's raw strength was undeniably monstrous. And yet, this man had disarmed him within seconds? Tisk, TSK, TSK. So much for being higher beings. You're really not that impressive. Orochimaru's voice was mocking. Yes, having more chakra granted an advantage in battle. But at 6 paths level combat, chakra was rarely depleted. Against someone like Momoshiki, Orochimaru knew how to turn chakra into a weapon rather than a resource to be drained. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Momoshiki's expression turned ice cold. He called himself a god. He was arrogant, seeing humans as nothing but insects. Even Kaguya, to him, was a mere rat who had fled in disgrace. But now, Orochimaru had annihilated his subordinates and humiliated Kinshiki in mere moments. This was an insult. And Momoshiki would not tolerate it. Momoshiki-sama is invincible. Die, insect! Kinshiki, wielding his red battle axe, lunged at Orochimaru once more. So fast. And there were 2 axes this time? Akatsuki Kinshiki was certain that Orochimaru couldn't use the Flying Thunder God technique here. If his attack connected, he was confident that Orochimaru would be split in 2. Even with truth-seeking orbs, Orochimaru wouldn't be able to stop the sheer force of the strike. His giant axe, blazing with red light, carried the power to cleave mountains. And it swung straight for Orochimaru. But would Orochimaru really lower his guard just because he was speaking? Of course not. He had survived countless battles, never once did he let his vigilance slip. Just before the axe struck, Orochimaru twisted sideways, narrowly avoiding the blow. And then, a white skeletal hand materialized out of thin air and grabbed Kinshiki's entire body. Damn it, it's you! Chapter 418, Susanoo. The massive white skull stopped in midair, its enormous palm gripping Kinshiki tightly. Kinshiki struggled to push Susanoo away with his strength, but how could Orochimaru give him the chance? The moment Susanoo caught Kinshiki, Orochimaru had already thrown the Kusanagi into the air, executing 2 actions at once. Bang! 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 Thick white smoke rose into the air. Countless Kusanagi blades spread across the entire battlefield. Whoosh! Like a torrential storm, the countless Kusanagi swords rained down, all piercing toward Kinshiki. Orochimaru had developed this technique long ago, but he rarely used it in actual combat. Aya! Kinshiki roared in fury. Boom! A massive explosion erupted. With overwhelming strength, Kinshiki finally broke free from the grasp of Orochimaru's Susanoo. The crimson weapon in his hand swung furiously, attempting to parry the incoming Kusanagi blades. Clang! 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 The relentless sound of metal clashing rang out continuously. But there were simply too many swords. Even with Byakugan, Kinshiki couldn't block them all under Orochimaru's precise control. Splurt! 2 fresh wounds burst open, and Kinshiki was injured again. Where there was one, there was another. The second sword, the third, the fourth. Akatsuki Momoshiki watched the scene unfold before him. Kinshiki, fall back! Momoshiki shouted angrily. Keeping an eye on Kaguya, he swiftly raised his hand, releasing a burst of chakra to block the incoming Kusanagi swords. At the same time, he extended his left hand, pulling Kinshiki toward him with absorbing force. Master. I'm sorry. There's no point in saying that now. Step back for now. Yes. On a rooftop near the teleportation portal, several figures crouched together, examining a map spread on the ground. Danzo-sama, based on the positions marked here, there are too many areas we need to attack. Moving as a single unit won't be feasible. Danzo narrowed his eyes and said solemnly, split into 3 groups. Understood. One of them nodded. I'll lead the northern assault, you take the west, and you handle the east. Zetsu nodded. No objections. Then let's move out. All units, advance. Yes. Yes. Countless white Zetsu clones responded, moving swiftly toward their designated battlefields under the command of their respective leaders. Meanwhile, the teleportation portal continued to transport reinforcements. With white Zetsu relaying information, those arriving later wouldn't lose track of their targets. Yasagami Kajiki. Bang! 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 Watching as Momoshiki was sent flying by Kaguya's barrage of chakra fists, Orochimaru smirked. A god? Is that all? How is this possible? Momoshiki roared, barely stabilizing himself as he landed. He was utterly shaken. How could these two, who had, at most, the power of a divine fruit, be capable of defeating him? Damn it! Master, use that technique. Just like before. Kinshiki, bloodied and battered, approached Momoshiki and spoke respectfully. Hearing this, Momoshiki froze for a moment, then a cruel smile spread across his face. Let's do it. Without hesitation, he stretched out one clawed hand. The red Rinnegan in his palm flashed ominously, and a massive surge of energy instantly engulfed Kinshiki. Within moments, Kinshiki's body compressed and transformed into a heart-shaped chakra fruit. Momoshiki didn't hesitate. He grabbed the fruit that had once been Kinshiki and devoured it in large bites. In less than a moment, the pale-skinned man had turned into a monstrous being with red skin and sharp fangs. A purple Rinnegan emerged in the center of his forehead, while the Rinnegan on his palms changed from red to gold. Despite being a celestial race, the Akatsuki clan was not immortal. Their natural lifespan capped at 2,000 years. However, consuming divine fruits not only increased their power but also extended their lifespan. Momoshiki, having lived in luxury, had always taken divine fruits, eating them like snacks. He was the epitome of indulgence. Kinshiki's body was, in fact, nothing more than a chakra construct created by Momoshiki. His entire being was composed of chakra, no different from the tailed beasts created by the Sage of Six Paths. Perhaps the only difference was that Kinshiki was humanoid. Of course, now, he no longer existed in any form. He had been compressed into a blood-red, heart-shaped fruit, and devoured by Momoshiki. Now, behold the power of a god. Momoshiki roared. The Rinnegan on his forehead flashed, and from the crater below, a colossal lava giant, its body dripping with molten rock, began to rise. As soon as the lava giant emerged, it didn't hesitate. With overwhelming might, it swung its massive fist downward toward Orochimaru. Orochimaru prepared to counter, but at that moment, a rift in space suddenly appeared behind him. "Dodge this first!" Kagaya's voice echoed from afar. Sensing that it was Kagaya, Orochimaru didn't resist and allowed her to pull him into the rift. Boom! The instant Orochimaru vanished, the lava giant's punch landed, shaking the earth violently. Orochimaru reappeared beside Kagaya. "That attack wouldn't have harmed me." "I know, but..." Seeing Kagaya hesitate, Orochimaru chuckled. "Oh? Is this concern for me?" "It's not." "Heh. Kagaya, you're even more arrogant than I thought." "Idiot!" Chapter 419. Seeing the two of them chatting as if no one else was present, Akatsuki Momoshiki roared in fury. The lava giant took 2 steps forward and swung its meteorite-like fist once again. However, this time, with the distance in his favor, Orochimaru was well prepared. Vibrant trees sprouted from the ground, quickly entangling the stone colossus. At the same time, the white skeletal frame of Susanoo rapidly expanded, lifting both Kagaya and Orochimaru up to its head. Moments later, Orochimaru's complete Susanoo manifested in full view of everyone. Orochimaru's complete Susanoo remained white, and his weapons were still a dragon cannon and a katana. As soon as it appeared, Susanoo's hands moved with tremendous force, catching the lava giant's fist head-on. Boom! A deafening impact shook the battlefield, and the ground instantly caved in. The already cratered landscape now had a new depression several kilometers wide. Mokuton and Susanoo? Seeing this, Akatsuki Momoshiki sneered in disdain. "Humph, how boring!" Roar! The lava giant bellowed, effortlessly tearing apart the wooden restraints. "This thing is quite strong." Orochimaru smirked from atop Susanoo's head. This lava giant's technique was known as Saruwa Iwa, the Rock of the Monkey King. The raw strength of a primate's arm was already far greater than that of a human. Naturally, Saruwa Iwa's power surpassed Susanoo's. If not for Mokuton weakening it beforehand, Orochimaru's Susanoo wouldn't have been able to catch that punch at all. Just how strong was this lava giant? It could only be said that a single-tailed beast was no match for it. "Do you want me to take action?" Kagaya asked indifferently. Orochimaru waved his hand casually. "No need." As he spoke, he brought his hands together. Boom! A massive surge of chakra erupted once again. This wasn't the first time Orochimaru had used ninjutsu while inside Susanoo. Senpo, Mokuton, Makijin no Jutsu. A wooden golem as massive as the lava beast rose from the ground. Wrapped around its body was a wooden dragon. Unlike chakra constructs, this wooden entity rivaled even Akatsuki Momoshiki's creations. The Makijin wasted no time, charging directly at Saruwa Iwa. At the same time, the Mokuryu lunged forward, coiling around the enemy. Orochimaru clenched Susanoo's fist, pulled a bazooka from his back, and fired. Boom! The lava giant, bound by the Mokuryu, was blasted apart. Suddenly, a firebird appeared in the sky, circling overhead while releasing fire bombs. Was this a phoenix? No, it was merely a chakra construct of the fire attribute. Orochimaru smirked. Neon, huh? He effortlessly aimed his rocket launcher at the lava giant. Boom! A single shot, annihilation. The lava giant, already restrained by the Mokuryu, had no way to dodge. Boom! The rock colossus was shattered in an instant, and the Makijin seized the opportunity to deliver 2 devastating punches. Boom! The earth trembled violently. Orochimaru swiftly put away his rocket launcher, drew his katana, and slashed upward. Slash! The firebird in the sky was cleaved in 2. This level of technique doesn't pose a challenge to me at all. You lowly creature, don't get arrogant. Lowly creature? Orochimaru chuckled. You always call others lowly creatures, but now that you've been beaten down by one, what does that make you? A defective experiment? As he spoke, Orochimaru's Susanoo raised its foot and stomped down, grinding the shattered remains of the lava giant into the earth. The humiliation was undeniable. "Damn you! Take this!" Gritting his teeth, Akatsuki Momoshiki wasted no more words. Extending his left hand, he condensed a massive purple-black chakra sphere. Chakra can be used in countless ways during battle, yet all you do is hurl it around mindlessly? Orochimaru sneered. "How primitive!" "What did you say?" "Explode!" Boom! A tremendous explosion echoed across the battlefield. Before Akatsuki Momoshiki could react, the chakra sphere in his hand detonated. A mushroom cloud surged into the night sky. This guy. Momoshiki's eyes widened in shock. He had no idea how the chakra sphere in his hand had exploded. But it didn't matter. As the golden rinnegan in his right hand absorbed the explosion's energy like a black hole, he prepared to retaliate. Just as he was about to unleash the amplified chakra blast, his expression suddenly changed. Without hesitation, he hurled the attack behind him. "Trying to ambush me? Die!" Orochimaru had just dispersed Susanoo and was emerging from the space rift Kaguya had created, lying in wait for a sneak attack. But he was hit directly. Whoosh! Boom! A devastating impact. The overwhelming energy engulfed Orochimaru completely. Momoshiki sneered. "That fool is dead." But then, Orochimaru smiled within the explosion. Bang! A puff of white smoke flashed, Orochimaru vanished. What? A clone? Akatsuki Momoshiki had never seen a shadow clone before. When Orochimaru's body disappeared, his face was filled with shock. "My turn!" With a twisted grin, Orochimaru dropped from the sky, a black rod in hand. Momoshiki immediately sensed danger and retreated. But... splurt! A gray bone pierced through his back, straight through his heart. Momoshiki's eyes widened in disbelief. He slowly turned his head, only to see Kaguya's cold, expressionless face. Without hesitation, Kaguya withdrew the bone spike and swiftly distanced herself. Impossible. Akatsuki Momoshiki's mind reeled in shock. He had actually been hit by Kaguya? Chapter 420. The Shikatsumiyaku bones were powerful, but for Akatsuki Momoshiki, they weren't enough to make his body collapse instantly. All he had to do was use his own chakra to suppress the Shikatsumiyaku's disintegration effect. Unfortunately for him, with his enemies right in front of him, he simply had no time to do so. Orochimaru, who had just landed, knew that getting struck by Shikatsumiyaku was a decisive moment in the battle. There was no need for him to rush in for another attack. To you, Earth's shinobi may seem weak, but when it comes to creativity, they far surpass the Akatsuki clan, who arrogantly call themselves gods yet remain stagnant in their ways. Earth's humans? So this is how mortals fight? Momoshiki scoffed. Mortals? Haha, just call us that outright. Orochimaru chuckled lightly. Cloning was a standard tactic among shinobi. Even in a split-second confrontation, not even Momoshiki's Byakugan could instantly distinguish a shadow clone from the real body. Using this technique to mislead an opponent was a tried-and-true method. Momoshiki's Rinnegan could absorb any chakra-based attack and reflect it back with amplified power. Of course, Orochimaru was well aware of this. By modifying the chakra composition with his biological engineering, he had made Momoshiki's chakra sphere explode prematurely. The explosion served as a distraction, forcing Momoshiki to react instinctively. Then, while Momoshiki focused on absorbing the blast, Orochimaru quickly dispersed Susanoo, sent a shadow clone into Kaguya's different dimension, and launched himself high into the sky. The sheer scale of the explosion disrupted Momoshiki's Byakugan, momentarily obscuring his vision. By the time Momoshiki had finished absorbing the energy and his sight cleared, Kaguya had already opened a rift behind him, allowing Orochimaru's clone to attack. With the real body, the clone, and Kaguya, they had formed a three-pronged assault. This was basic shinobi combat logic. Yet Momoshiki fell for it. He was arrogant, he looked down on Kaguya, believing himself far superior. Because of this, he focused entirely on Orochimaru, the primary attacker. Thus, while he managed to react in time to counter Orochimaru's clone and evade the real Orochimaru's attack, he could not avoid Kaguya. It all happened in an instant. Let me ask you one last time, where is my father buried? Kaguya's cold voice echoed through the battlefield. She raised another Shikatsumiyaku bone, its tip aimed at Akatsuki Momoshiki. She would never forget the look in her parents' eyes when they risked their lives to save her. It was because of that betrayal that pure Akatsuki Kaguya was forced down the path of a murderous witch. Hearing her question, Momoshiki let out a cold laugh. Who knows? Maybe some wild beast took the corpse away. You want to die? Kaguya's eyes flashed coldly. Whoosh! Without hesitation, she fired another bone projectile. Momoshiki instinctively raised his hands to block. But just as he moved, several black rods suddenly emerged from a rift in space, piercing his back. Orochimaru had attacked again. As a shinobi, he would never hesitate to exploit an enemy's blind spot. He had no need for honor in battle. Cha-choo-choo! The countless black rods impaled Momoshiki, turning him into a pincushion. Damn you, mortals! Momoshiki couldn't believe it. He lost? Like this? He was unwilling, furious. He had eaten so many divine fruits. Yet he was defeated? Die! Kaguya's Shikatsumiyaku struck again and again, mercilessly piercing him. Orochimaru did not stop her. He knew Kaguya needed this. She needed to vent. No one knew how long it went on. But after Akatsuki Momoshiki's body completely collapsed, Kaguya finally stopped attacking. She crouched on the ground, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She wasn't exhausted. She was enraged. Orochimaru walked toward her, reaching out his hand. Well? Still searching? Kaguya grasped his hand and stood up. No. He refuses to say anything. Asking further is pointless. Besides, she hesitated. 1,000 years have passed. Even if I find the site, there might be nothing left. She didn't finish her sentence, but Orochimaru understood. After 1,000 years, even bones might have crumbled into dust. With Momoshiki defeated, the war outside continued to rage. Even though the Akatsuki couldn't stand against Orochimaru and Kaguya, they were still overwhelmingly powerful compared to the White Zetsu army. It often took hundreds of White Zetsu to kill just one Akatsuki warrior. And as expected, the difference in combat strength between the White Zetsu and the clones was evident. A single White Zetsu had combat abilities comparable to an average Chunin. Meanwhile, a clone possessed Jonin-level strength with Sharingan. No, by now, the clones had even awakened Mangekyo Sharingan. Although they couldn't manifest Susanoo, their combat power had skyrocketed. In this battle, if Orochimaru hadn't upgraded these clones to Mangekyo, the 100,000 White Zetsu might have been completely outmatched. Now, back on the Akatsuki homeworld, Orochimaru stood among the clouds, watching the battle unfold below. A slight smirk appeared on his lips. These are your people. What do you want to do with them? Leave no one alive. Kaguya's expression was cold. Without waiting for Orochimaru's response, she leapt into battle once more. So ruthless. Orochimaru chuckled but showed no concern. Suddenly, his gaze sharpened. On the battlefield, he spotted a mysterious figure holding a fishing rod. That is. Chapter 421, Akatsuki Urashiki. Orochimaru had an impression of him, but it wasn't particularly deep. He only remembered that Urashiki was fairly skilled. However, Orochimaru didn't care. With Kaguya handling the battle, and himself still present, victory was inevitable. As he observed Kaguya's battle, Orochimaru finally pieced together some answers to his lingering questions. judging from Otsutsuki Momoshiki's arrogance and the power he had displayed. What Kagaya feared wasn't Momoshiki himself, but rather the entire Otsutsuki clan. Kagaya was likely strong enough to handle a single Momoshiki. But if another Urashiki or Kinshiki appeared, she wouldn't stand a chance. Not to mention other Otsutsuki clan members, all of whom possessed chakra. So the true source of her fear, beyond the trauma of her past, was the overwhelming power of her clan. Think about it. Hundreds of Otsutsuki, each with the destructive power of a perfect Jinchuriki. Each possessing the Byakugan, each wielding Yin-Yang release. If such an army arrived on Earth, it would mean absolute annihilation. Just like now. If Orochimaru and his clones hadn't been here, Kagaya's fate would have repeated itself. Either killed, or sealed once again. Kill them all. Damn it, where did these guys come from? There's no end to them. Damn it. Die! Goodbye. The White Zetsu army and the clone army advanced together, sweeping toward the Otsutsuki stronghold like a relentless tide. If one warrior couldn't win, there would be two. If two couldn't win, there would be four. Orochimaru had perfected the art of overwhelming force. The battlefield was littered with countless corpses, making the war appear brutally tragic. However, the death of Momoshiki had dealt a heavy psychological blow to the remaining Otsutsuki. After a full day of battle, at the cost of over half his forces, Orochimaru, alongside Kagaya, finally annihilated the entire Otsutsuki clan. This included countless high-ranking members, and even Otsutsuki Urashiki. What? They exterminated every last Otsutsuki? Even the elderly and children? Too cruel? Maybe. Call Orochimaru a butcher if you want. But he stood by his decision. It's over. Standing atop the Otsutsuki Ancestral Star Castle, Kagaya gazed down at the war-ravaged planet, her white robes flowing in the wind. Her expression was indifferent. As a princess of the Otsutsuki, she had personally destroyed her own clan. No one could understand what she was feeling, except for her. Yeah. Rest for 2 days, then we prepare to return to Earth. Orochimaru stretched his arms. For now, let's clean up the battlefield with Zetsu. Yes, father. The Zetsu army departed with absolute obedience. Orochimaru turned to Kagaya. Let's go find a place to rest. With that, he deactivated his 6 paths mode and walked away. Orochimaru. She suddenly spoke. Thank you. Orochimaru stopped. Huh? Didn't expect to hear that from you. He laughed. I'm actually surprised. Never mind, let's go. Without another word, Orochimaru entered the castle. Kagaya hesitated for a moment, then followed, her long robes dragging behind her. 1 month later. Earth. The ninja world. By Konoha's calendar, it was now November, year 56. 5 kilometers outside the central city of the Land of Frost, a private villa stood in the suburbs. The estate was immense, but its surroundings were even more unusual. Fantasy, ocean, forest, desert, wasteland, lava, dense fog. From the sky, these 8 different terrains formed a pattern. But the real secret of this place? Each region was inhabited by a tailed beast. Yes, tailed beasts. The one-tailed Shikaku resided in the desert. The 2-tailed Manitabi lived in the fantasy realm. The 3-tailed Isabu swam in the sea. The 4-tailed Son Goku remained deep in the caves. And so on. Each tailed beast had its own domain. Together, these 8 beasts guarded this villa. Even B, due to his close bond with Kyuki, often visited to chat. At this moment, inside the villa. In the courtyard, Kushina was teaching several children. Meanwhile, Mikoto was making tea. Inside the living room, Tsunade sat with Orochimaru, hosting some unexpected guests. Orochimaru frowned slightly, looking at the 3 women in front of him. Tsunade, what's going on? He recognized all 3. One had braided hair. One wore a backless dress. The last was dressed in deep blue robes. Some of the other villages wanted closer ties with you, so they sent them here. Oh. Orochimaru nodded thoughtfully, then changed the subject. But at their age, isn't this a little inappropriate? Tsunade scoffed. You actually care about that? Orochimaru was immortal. After 1,000 years, would a mere 10 or 20-year age gap even matter? Obviously not. Fair point. But... Orochimaru glanced at the three women and smirked. I understand Yujito from Kumo and Pakura from Suna. His eyes landed on the last woman. But... Mei Terumi? His smile deepened. Aren't you the Mizukage? What are you doing here? Chapter 422, hearing Orochimaru's words, Mei smiled charmingly. I carefully reviewed all the ninja files in my village. Aside from myself, there isn't a single kunoichi who would be worthy of someone like you. So you came here yourself? Yes. Mei nodded without hesitation. Orochimaru, a man who reshaped both himself and the world through technology. If a wide net was to be cast, ordinary women wouldn't qualify. As shinobi, they dedicated their lives for the sake of their villages. This was no different. After all, among the higher-ups of every village, who didn't know that the true ruler of the ninja world was Orochimaru? Following him wouldn't guarantee special treatment. But at the very least, it ensured that her village would receive fair treatment. No matter how one looked at it, this was not a losing deal. Haha, you're quite straightforward. Orochimaru smirked, then turned to the other two women. And what about you two? What's your reason? The two in question. Yujito, former Jinchuriki of the Two Tails from Kumogakure. Pakura, elite jonin of Sunagakure and wielder of Scorch Release. If Orochimaru was excluded, they would undoubtedly be considered top-tier elites in the shinobi world. For the sake of the village, ultimately the choice was mine. Yes, if it's you, I can accept it. Yujito and Pakura spoke with respect, one after the other. Haha. Since you've all said that much, I won't say anything more. Orochimaru's lips curled into a mischievous smirk. The only thing I can tell you is, this choice is the right one. I hope so. I trust you won't disappoint us. Orochimaru chuckled. Father! What? Wait a second. The moment the word father was spoken, not just Tsunade, but even Mei and Pakura were completely dumbfounded. Because the voice didn't come from any of them. It came from the front gate. And that voice. Black Zetsu? Black Zetsu called Orochimaru father? What the hell? Someone explain what's going on? Orochimaru, however, seemed completely unsurprised. He calmly stood up and opened the door. What do you need from me? Black Zetsu bowed respectfully. The submarine encountered some technical issues. Father, you need to take care of it. Orochimaru had begun constructing these war machines a long time ago. However, now that he had established an official department, these elite shinobi and advanced weapons were used strictly for official purposes. For something like that, just find me. He can handle it. Orochimaru waved his hand dismissively. After all, his successor had inherited his full knowledge. A minor technical issue like this was trivial. Understood. Black Zetsu hesitated for a moment, then nodded and slowly sank into the ground. He knew that as Orochimaru and Tsunade's child, his task was clear. Watching Zetsu leave, Tsunade, who was now visibly pregnant, quickly shut the door, grabbed Orochimaru, and dragged him into the living room. Hey! You, what the hell was that? Why is he calling you father? Tsunade's face was filled with disbelief. Yet, at the same time, a small part of her still hoped she was wrong. Orochimaru simply smirked. What do you think? The answer was obvious. Tsunade groaned, covering her forehead with her hand. I knew it, you bastard. You really don't even her? Mikoto placed a teapot on the coffee table, sighing. She turned toward the guests. Mizuki-sama, you two, have a seat. Let's talk properly. Okay. Mei and the others were still in shock but instinctively sat down. At that moment, a cold voice echoed through the room. Orochimaru. The tone was so frigid, it sent chills down everyone's spine. Everyone turned toward the source, curious about who, aside from Tsunade, would dare call Orochimaru by name. On the second floor, a woman with long, silver-white hair stood in a flowing white robe. Kaguya. There was no doubt about it. Only she would speak to Orochimaru like that. Kaguya, what is it? Kaguya's expression remained icy cold. The TV isn't working. Come fix it. After speaking, she turned and walked back into her room. Everyone fell silent. Orochimaru, however, found the situation hilarious. Who would have thought that the goddess of the rabbit moon, sealed for thousands of years, would turn into a hikikomori after returning to Earth? Now, after wiping out the Akatsuki clan, her daily routine consisted of watching TV, binge-watching dramas, surfing the internet. The internet. Orochimaru chuckled. The world had already transformed into his vision, and he had achieved everything he wanted. What higher purpose did he need? What did it matter who created the system or why it was bound to him? None of that was important anymore. Now, he had one new priority. Expanding his family. Well, it was time to discuss with Kaguya how to create a clan of immortals. That's the end of this tale. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more content. Check out the rest of the stories on the channel, and I'll see you on the next story.